My stepmother burned my late mom's belongings while I was in the hospital, claiming my dad would approve because she was taking care of us. I am a 23-year-old woman who has spent many years in and out of the hospital due to a chronic condition that I have had since I was a young child. My 48-year-old father has always been incredibly encouraging and makes an effort to be present for me for any operations or treatments I need. I recently underwent major surgery, and I had a really difficult recovery. I spent roughly 2 weeks in the hospital, and it was incredibly difficult. Dad spent the majority of that time with me, but he had to go on a work trip a few days prior to my release. He travels all over the country for his profession as a business consultant, and sometimes he just can't escape it. I really understood his sincere apologies for not being there to pick me up from the hospital. In addition, my 45-year-old stepmother was expected to take care of things while he was away. To give you some context, I have never really gotten along with my stepmother. We've had a strained relationship since she married my dad when I was 16. I know she doesn't truly like me, but I still try to be polite. She has always made me feel as though I was interfering with her relationship with my dad by saying and doing things. She also believes that I resemble my mother, who died when I was 10, too much. By the way, my stepmother detests the fact that I resemble my mother since she believes it serves as a reminder to my dad of his former partner. Yes, I am aware that she sounds crazy. But ultimately, I accepted my dad's love for her, which is why I put up with a lot of her actions. I eventually returned home after being released from the hospital. Although I was tired, I was glad to be out of the hospital. When I initially entered my room, everything appeared to be as usual. I ended myself napping after lying on my bed to unwind. I realized something was wrong when I decided to tidy up my room a little after waking up. I quickly discovered that a lot of things were missing, like, really, a lot of things, but I suppose I was too tired to notice how empty my room appeared. I began to panic. Perhaps there had been a break-in, I reasoned. I began scurrying about the room, looking for anything that might still be there. I mean, I was still so weak after my operation that I could hardly stand, but I was desperate. Almost immediately, it became evident that everything missing was my mother's property. Among other nostalgic items, I had a number of letters Mom had written to me as a child, some framed pictures, and this old jewelry box of hers. Normally, they would remain on my nightstand or dresser, but on that particular day, they were all gone. Everything was gone when I looked in the storage room where we kept some of my mom's old belongings, including her clothing and a few antiques from her family. It was unbelievable to me. I went straight to my stepmother. I tried my best to remain composed around her. I inquired as to whether she had taken anything out of my room. She gave me this self-satisfied smile. She then nonchalantly informed me that I no longer had to worry about any of those things since she had taken care of some of my things. I had a sick feeling in my stomach. Although I was aware that my stepmother had always harbored animosity toward my mother, I repeatedly prayed that the only thing she had done was to store my mother's belongings in a storage facility farther away from our home. My stepmother kept smiling smugly when I asked her what she had done with my belongings. I finally lost it and began yelling at her to tell me what she had done. She then chuckled and informed me that she had set fire to everything that belonged to my mother. I was so stunned by that I quickly stopped talking. I was unable to even comprehend it. She simply stated that this was the best way for her and my dad to go on with their lives when I eventually got around to asking her why she would do something like that. She apparently claimed that my dad didn't require reminders of his former existence. I attempted to fight with her, telling her that my dad would not approve of her actions and that she had made the worst mistake of her life. She merely laughed at me and claimed to know him better than I did, adding that he would be pleased that she had destroyed my mother's belongings in order to maintain their relationship. What I was hearing was unbelievable. I could hardly talk because I was so unhappy and furious. I tried not to cry while I was trembling, but the tears just poured. I felt as though I was experiencing my mother's loss once more. It was unbelievable to me that someone could be so vicious. I simply couldn't stop thinking about what I had lost. I lost everything I had of my mother. That's when I got too weak. I was overburdened. I walked to my room, leaving my stepmother standing there. After crying for a long time, I made the decision to call my father. He was in the middle of a meeting, which was unfortunate for me. He sounded quite busy and preoccupied when he eventually responded. I made an effort to explain the situation to him, but I could tell he wasn't really listening. He hung up quickly after saying something about handling it when he came home. I was so powerless. The days that followed were the longest of my entire existence. My stepmother, who pretended that she had done nothing wrong, left me feeling alone, furious, and devastated in that house. She was careful to emphasize that she had done my dad a great favor. She insisted that my attachment to my mother's possessions was immature and that it was time for me to mature. Every chance she got, she made fun of me. I'm not sure how I survived those times, but I was able to wait for my dad to return. I was waiting for my dad when he returned from his trip. I repeated everything to him, and this time he paid attention. He didn't trust me at first. He believed that my stepmother was just playing a cruel practical joke or that there was some sort of miscommunication. However, when I showed him my room and our storage area, he turned pale upon seeing that everything was empty. The love of his life was my mother. At the age of 10, they had first met. My mom and dad's childhood possessions were among the many items my stepmother set on fire. Those things played a significant role in my dad's recollections with my mom, even though he had moved on and married my stepmother. He valued them greatly, therefore it was devastating to see them all gone. My stepmother tried to act as like it wasn't a huge thing when he confronted her. She even claimed that I had brainwashed my dad into believing it was significant when she noticed how upset he was becoming, even though she was only assisting him in moving on. My father went crazy. He's never been so furious in my life. One thing about my dad that you should know is that he's a fairly laid-back guy. You have to do a lot to make him mad. My stepmother was obviously afraid and did not anticipate that her behavior would make him angry. My father immediately informed her that he desired a divorce. He instructed her to get her belongings and depart. My dad told my stepmother that the house was his long before he ever met her, despite her attempts to claim that it was also hers and that he couldn't evict her. He also threatened to call his lawyer to have her removed from the property if she didn't leave within the next 24 hours. My dad and I mourned the loss of my mom's possessions together, and my stepmother stormed out of the house. In a fit of rage, my father chose to ruin my stepmother's life. My dad sued her for emotional anguish and property destruction after speaking with his attorney. Her behavior upset him, and he wanted her to pay the price. Naturally, my stepmother lost her mind. She was shocked to learn that my father was supporting me. She persisted in pointing the finger at me, saying that I had influenced him and made him turn against her. My dad, though, wasn't having any of it. The fact that she had ruined the final mementos of his first marriage and the woman he really loved infuriated him. He was no longer even able to look at her. The litigation is currently underway, and the divorce is ongoing. Although my stepmother is battling it, she has little chance of success. She has been attempting to play the victim and has claimed that my attachment to the past destroyed everything. Some of my stepmother's family members have contacted me and accused me of being immature for meddling in their affairs. I am aware that I done nothing improper. My stepmother would have suffered the same repercussions if my dad had eventually learned about my mom's missing possessions. Even still, her family members blame me for her predicament and constantly texting me about how hard she's been going. My mind is messed up by the grief I'm experiencing, even though I know I'm not to blame. All I need is someone who is not involved in this mess to assure me that I done nothing wrong. Is it rude of me to inform my father that my stepmother destroyed everything belonging to my deceased mother? First update. Hi everyone. Because of the tremendous escalation, I wanted to provide you with an update. I was still in disbelief over what my stepmother had done when I initially commented, but I can assure you that this case is turning into a nightmare for her, and I honestly don't feel sorry for her. It's getting worse for her than she could have ever imagined, and my dad isn't holding back. He's determined to make her pay. As it turns out, my stepmother had no idea what she was getting herself into, and the legal procedure has been proceeding swiftly. She burnt some quite precious items in addition to sentimental mementos. Antique keepsakes inherited from my mother's side of the family made up the majority of the objects she destroyed. They belonged to a collection that had been passed down through the years. A few items, such as a set of antique jewelry and an old watch, were valued at thousands of dollars. Even if that is bad for her, it gets worse because those antiques were covered by insurance. My mom's family had insurance policies linked to the heirloom's worth since they took such good care of them. My dad had even more clout in the litigation after he understood this. In addition to mental distress allegations, my stepmother is also dealing with a significant property destruction case that includes concrete proof of monetary loss. She must reimburse the full value of these products because they were destroyed, and let's just say she lacks the funds to do so. She is currently being pursued by the insurance company as well. They have begun their own investigation since my dad made a claim, and they are fully supporting him. My stepmother is unable to escape this one. She was completely mistaken if she believed she could simply destroy these items and leave. The lawyers for my dad have been keeping a close eye on everything and have ensured that she is in a tight spot. It's really cruel to see, but she deserves all of it for everything she's done. Thank God my dad was astute enough to have her sign a prenuptial agreement before they were married, and the divorce is proceeding swiftly as well. Since that means she won't be taking much with her, that has been a tremendous assistance. Initially, she attempted to challenge it, But her attorney just informed her that she had no case. Since the prenuptial agreement is unchangeable, my dad will keep all of his possessions from before and after they were married. That means my stepmother won't have access to any of my dad's money, a fancy house, or a fancy automobile. I am fully aware of her panic because she has been blowing up my phone every day. She manages to text me again after I block her. She screams about how I destroyed her life in these lengthy messages that she sends me. Her constant attempts to portray herself as the victim are almost comical. She says she's paying the price for something that wasn't her fault since I persuaded my dad into divorcing her. She keeps screaming that everything is breaking apart because I couldn't let it go and that she was only attempting to assist by burning my mom's belongings. She has also been telling me about how her life is falling apart, and to be honest, I don't even care or have any sympathy for her. People in her social circle are apparently beginning to turn away from her. It has been devastating to lose her reputation because she has always placed a great deal of importance on appearances. She used to have elegant brunches and dinner parties, but now her so-called friends have entirely abandoned her. I've heard that many people are supporting my dad because they understand how much my mom's possessions matter to him. Her sob story about doing it for the family isn't convincing. She is already feeling the effects of the financial impact. She is losing control of the lifestyle she was so proud of as the lawsuit continues and the prenup prevents her from receiving any of my dad's assets. My dad's business even rented her a beautiful car, which he canceled as soon as the divorce papers were filed. She has been complaining to me that she looks like a pathetic loser, because she must utilize public transportation everywhere, and that I am solely to blame for her predicament. She's desperate, based on what she's been telling me, since she can't stop messaging. She is looking for a new location to live, but she lacks the funds for a lifestyle that is comparable to what she is accustomed to. She could certainly live with something less expensive, but she refuses to live, quote, below what she deserves. She even attempted to use guilt tripping to persuade my dad to let her stay in our home until she recovered, but he refused. She is upset about everything, including the house, the litigation, and the prenuptial agreement. I always get a text saying that I'm to blame whenever things goes wrong for her. She is truly going crazy. According to a mutual acquaintance, she has been pleading for favors and attempting to win people over to her cause, but nobody is retaliating. The majority of people don't want to interact with her since they are aware of what she did. To be honest, after everything she did to me, it's kind of satisfying to see her crumble. She believed that she could simply enter, set my mother's belongings on fire, and pretend that she had done us a favor. She is currently losing everything. My dad, however, is surviving all of this rather nicely. He may still be grieving over what transpired, in my opinion. He cherished the items my mother left behind because he loved her so much. In addition, he abruptly lost my stepmother, who had become his new love interest. Even though my stepmother is still alive, he is quite angry and hurt by how things have ended out. He is using all of his hurt and rage to make sure my stepmother is held accountable for her actions. His attorneys are doing a fantastic job, and it seems like we're getting closer to finding some sort of resolution every day. It's clearly obvious that the case will destroy her finances, but I'm not sure how long it will last. She will be left with nothing as a result of the property destruction claims, the insurance company pursuing her, and the ongoing divorce. For the time being, things are unquestionably going in the correct direction, but I'll keep you all informed as more develops. Knowing that justice is being done makes me happy. Second update. Hello everybody. It's time for another update, and the situation just becomes more bizarre. My stepmother dug herself a deeper hole than I thought she could, but here we are. With claims of emotional distress and property devastation, the lawsuit was already going quite badly for her, but it has now gotten even worse. My dad's attorneys discovered something significant during the lawsuit's discovery period, which is essentially when all the material is gathered. It turns out that for years, my stepmother has been gradually siphoning off funds from my dad's company. She apparently had access to several of the company accounts, and when she took money out of them, she said it was for costs or domestic necessities. When the lawyers began reviewing the divorce's finances, they discovered all these strange transfers, but my dad trusted her enough to not question it. She was stealthily extracting hundreds here and there, so we're not talking about little sums either. She funded her lavish lifestyle with this money. Since he had no idea how much luxury goods cost, my dad was never informed about how much she had been spending on them. He assumed my stepmother would be reasonable about her expenditures, but he was completely mistaken. My dad was incensed when he learned. The last straw for him was learning that she had been stealing from him, even though he already felt deceived by her burning my mom's possessions. Her actions were not merely cunning, they were outright dishonesty. She had been taking money out of his accounts for her own use in order to maintain her extravagant lifestyle, and she had no claim to that money. She is currently dealing with a serious fraud charge in addition to the property destruction case. Things are becoming really serious as my dad faces charges of embezzlement. My dad isn't having any of it with her lawyer frantically attempting to work out a settlement. Instead of settling, he wants her to take full responsibility for her actions. To be honest, I don't hold it against him and, in fact, I'm somewhat proud of him. She has gotten away with a lot for a long time, but now everything is finally coming back to haunt her. At this stage, the case covers all of the money she stole in addition to the psychological harm and property damage. The case against her only gets stronger, and my dad's attorneys are doing a fantastic job. I'm shocked every time I learn something new about this situation. Even though I always knew she was cunning and self-centered, I didn't realize how shady she was. She was quite skilled at maintaining appearances and behaving like the ideal wife while surreptitiously stealing money from my dad. It's repulsive to consider. She now faces the prospect of going to jail. Money embezzlement is a serious offense, and if my dad's case continues as it is, she may be imprisoned. It's absurd to consider that she was acting untouchably only a few months ago, and that she is now embroiled in a major legal crisis. She cannot argue her way out of this because the money she stole is well documented, and my dad's legal team is working to have the fraud charges upheld. Her situation just gets worse with each piece of evidence they uncover. No one is providing her an easy way out, despite her constant attempts to strike agreements. She continues to blow up my phone and blame me for everything, of course. She insists that none of this would have occurred if I hadn't betrayed my father. Now, it's really quite pitiful. While she is the one who stole from him and destroyed the things that were important to him, she is denying any responsibility and pretending to be the victim. She goes on a tirade about how I destroyed her life every day. To be honest, I no longer even glance at her texts. However, I must admit that I am relieved that justice is at last being done. Seeing her face the repercussions after everything she did to my mom, my dad, and myself feels like the closure I didn't realize I needed. I feel both content and as though I'm in a different reality as I watch her fall apart and realize that she's losing everything. At this stage, the divorce is essentially finalized and is still proceeding. My dad will keep all of his assets, and the prenuptial agreement has made things much easier. Even though my stepmother is still fighting for whatever she can, she has little power because of the fraud charges that are looming over her. I don't know how long the fraud case will take to go to court, but based on what the attorneys are saying, she doesn't have a good chance. This new fraud case has completely changed the subject, yet the property destruction lawsuit is still pending. This time, she can lose her freedom rather than just money. I've been making an effort to keep my attention on my own recovery in the meanwhile. It's difficult to avoid getting sucked into everything that's going on, even while I'm still recovering from surgery. Seeing her finally receive what she deserves is helping me get through this very taxing circumstance. In any case, that's where we are at the moment. In summary, my stepmother is facing serious legal issues, the divorce is nearly complete, and my father is making sure she doesn't receive any more money than she is due. For the time being, it seems like we're finally getting near to some true justice, but I'll keep you all informed as things develop. Thank you very much for your support, it is really appreciated. Third update. Hello everybody. Almost 7 months have passed since my last post, but I'm here with the last part of this whole nightmare. Right off the start, I'll give you the spoiler. The legal proceedings are finally over. Let me now explain the specifics. Let me start with the positive. The court decided in my dad's and my favor on every point. The judge wasn't kidding around, and every single thing we said was true. My stepmother has been compelled to reimburse my dad's firm for every dime she embezzled. In addition, the court awarded her significant damages for damaging my mother's possessions. The entire cost of the damages was staggering. She will be totally broke for a very long time as a result of it. Her opulent lifestyle is over. She no longer owns pricey cars, beautiful purses, or lavish holidays. Officially, she has reached her lowest point. The divorce was equally brutal and ended at the same time as the lawsuit. My stepmother attempted one more dirty trick during the divorce proceedings. She claimed that my dad had emotionally abused her during their marriage, which is why she was forced to steal from him. She portrayed herself as a neglected, impoverished woman who only took money to make ends meet. It was unbelievable. Fortunately, my father was ready. Her accusations were totally demolished by his attorneys. Throughout their marriage, they had a ton of evidence that my stepmother was enjoying the good life on his cash. She spent the majority of her money on pricey spa treatments, luxury clothing, and vacations. Not exactly what you'd call survival essentials, according to numerous receipts. Her sob story didn't convince the judge at all. Actually, it backfired horribly. The court viewed it as merely another attempt to influence the system and failed to find any compassion. Her credibility plummeted, which only served to exacerbate the appearance of her fraud case. Regarding the deception, she will undoubtedly face severe repercussions. The prosecutors wouldn't budge when she attempted to negotiate a reduced sentence or any kind of compromise. She was accused of embezzlement, and although she was fortunate to avoid jail time by entering into a plea agreement, she must now pay restitution in addition to the damages from the civil lawsuit. She will also be subject to the court's supervision for some time because she is on probation for a few years. The nicest part was that our local news featured the fraud case, which was likely the last straw for her. Everyone was able to view all of her unclean laundry. She was portrayed as a sophisticated, well-to-do socialite, but she has now been revealed to be a thief and a phony. I must admit that watching her be put down so openly was quite satisfying. Now that everyone is aware of her true identity, she no longer acts as though I am beneath her, as she did for years. She has been attempting to start again since the court decisions, but it doesn't seem like it's working well. When she first started looking for a job, nobody in our community would even consider hiring her. I believe she attempted to relocate to a different district in an attempt to start again, but she isn't doing well there either. She currently lives in a small apartment and works at a minimum wage job that she obviously despises, at least based on the messages she occasionally sends me. Yes, she continues to text me. Despite everything, she still blames me for wrecking her life and sends me sour notes every few weeks. By now, it's almost comical. You took from my dad and destroyed my mom's belongings, and now you're the victim, lady? Yes, all right. I tend to ignore her, but occasionally I can't help but laugh at how naive she seems. I'm doing better myself. I'm recovering both psychologically and physically, albeit it's taken a while. My recuperation is about finished. I feel lighter mentally. I feel like I can finally breathe again now that this whole ordeal is finished, even if there were times when I felt completely overwhelmed. I still have bad days, especially when I consider that I will never see my mom again and that her possessions will never be replaced. However, it gives me some comfort to know that my stepmother actually suffered the repercussions of her behavior. I want to express my gratitude to everyone who has helped and encouraged me during this. During some of my lowest points, your encouraging words and guidance truly got me through. You have no idea how much it meant to me to know that I had support when it seemed like everything was crumbling. That's all for now. I'm hoping that this will be the last update I have to write on her. I'm permanently ending this phase of my life. Everyone, be careful. Caught my brother's fiancée cheating, got shunned. Years later, proven right, they only contacted me for divorce testimony. I, 30 million, attempted to persuade my brother, 35 million, to call off his wedding 3 years ago after learning that his fiancée, 33F, was unfaithful to him. Regretfully, none of the family members listened to my advice, and they nevertheless got married. Furthermore, by portraying me as a jealous person who couldn't bear to see my brother happy, they persuaded the family to cut me off. I haven't spoken to my family at all since, and they haven't made an effort to contact me either, until recently. They came a few days ago because they required me to testify in my brother's divorce proceedings. It seems that he had no intention of paying child support, but I have steadfastly refused to assist them. I'm now being accused of being selfish and callous. On the one hand, it feels like the necessary closure, and I'm rather happy that I can finally refuse them. However, some of my friends believe that I will later come to regret this choice. They think that this could be my one chance to make amends with my family, and if I turn them down now, I might not have another chance. What if I didn't testify in family court in support of my brother? I'm not sure what to do. Here is the whole tale for those of you who want to know more specifics. My brother, Mickey, and his fiancée, Na, who is now his wife, had been dating for 2 years when they were engaged. Mickey and I were not and had never been very close. Even as adults, our relationship as brothers was impacted by the fierce sibling rivalry we experienced as children. I was always, even unconsciously, in competition with him. The unfortunate thing is that my parents did little to deter this rivalry. They knew I disliked my brother and was angry that he was given preferential treatment over me simply because he was succeeding in life. To be fair, I was ignorant at the time and thought that families shouldn't evaluate you based on your performance. I believed that they ought to be somewhat neutral, particularly when it comes to siblings. Naturally, I now understand that's not how it operates. Everyone evaluates you according to your level of success, and family is no different. I had no idea how to approach things diplomatically at the time. Just whatever was on my mind, I would express it. Consequently, my parents discovered that I harbored animosity toward my brother since, despite my aversion to admitting it, he had consistently outperformed me in some areas. Unfortunately, for my parents, these certain things were all that counted. Mickey did exceptionally well in science, math, and related subjects. After graduating from college, he began working at a rapidly expanding computer business and earned a lot of money early on. He was intelligent, and his career graph kept getting better, so it wasn't shocking. However, I wasn't doing that well. I wanted to be a writer, so I went after a degree in literature. When I realized I was probably not as good a writer as I had been told throughout my youth, I became despondent and left school in my second year. I was just average in most things when I was younger, but I was incredibly good at writing. At least in that sense, I thought I was comparable to my brother because I would win various contests. I used my writing abilities as a means of competing with his academic and project accomplishments. But after leaving college, I worked as a freelance copywriter in an attempt to make a living on my own. My brother was doing really well and had even begun to repay our parents, while I was barely making enough to live on my own. Comparisons between us were inevitable, of course. My parents always made it a point to encourage me to get a more respectable career and to take my life more seriously whenever the family gathered together. At the conclusion of each lesson about my life, they would either compare me to my brother, advise me to learn from him, or say something equally irritating. These discussions frequently devolved into yelling contests. I would tell them that I was sick of being treated the same way since I was a child and that they were being bad parents by always comparing me to my brother. We would argue, cut off communication for a few weeks, and then they would try to make amends. It was the same ritual every time. Then, Mickey and his 2-year girlfriend became engaged. She had visited the family when they were dating, and I had met her a few times. Even while they were engaged, she seemed like a decent person and pleasant enough. However, my family threw a dinner party at our place approximately 2 weeks prior to the wedding. Despite our differences, Mickey and I always made an effort to maintain a friendly demeanor for appearances. Despite my lack of interest, I took part in every wedding-related activity. I still regret the decision I made to go out and smoke at some point during the dinner party. At that moment, I caught a glimpse of Mickey's fiancée Na making out with my younger cousin Jacob, 27 million. I had walked a short distance from the house back then because my parents were unaware that I smoked. I was perplexed when I saw Jacob's automobile because he had previously stated that he was going home. Curiosity compelled me to investigate further. I saw them together at that point. I'm not sure which of the three of us was more surprised, but I stubbed out my cigarette right once and began to head home without turning around. Na entered after a few minutes when I got back, but Jacob was not there. I suppose he went home at last. Fortunately, there were no queries about what had happened because everyone had been drinking and no one had realized that the three of us were missing. I didn't speak to my brother that evening. I left the party soon after because I hadn't had time to digest what I had witnessed. But Na persisted on messaging me all night long, pleading with me to keep what I had witnessed a secret from Mickey. She claimed that the only time she had made out with Jacob was when I saw them, and she felt a great deal of regret for it. She vowed that it would never occur again. Na begged me not to destroy her marriage, saying she was totally devoted to Mickey and would never do it again. She only asked that I keep her secret. After giving it some thought that evening, I made the decision to notify Mickey. I felt obligated to him as his brother, despite the fact that we were not particularly close. The least I could do was that. I told Mickey everything and asked if we might have lunch together the next day. He didn't answer right away, but he appeared astonished and upset. He simply thanked me for being honest with him before leaving for his house. I wasn't sure what to anticipate after that, so I was taken aback when, for a few days, no one in the family contacted me. About a week before the wedding, I discovered that everyone in the family had blocked me everywhere, which left me absolutely perplexed. I chose to go see my folks because I had no idea what was happening. I was shocked when they wouldn't even open the door. With nothing else to do, I went to see Mickey because I was sure he was involved. Mickey merely opened the door to make fun of me. He urged me to go as soon as he spotted me and began to make crude faces. His actions perplexed me much because the last time we spoke, he had expressed gratitude for my candor. But he was singing a new song now. Mickey claimed that because I was a terrible person, I was attempting to destroy his relationship with Na. I made up the narrative about her and Jacob, he said, simply to make things more dramatic. I knew Na had probably persuaded him that I was lying, even though his remarks were really hurting. I decided there was no use in debating, so I just went away without saying anything. My parents sent me a message later that day. After unblocking me, they informed me that they did not want me to get in touch with them ever again. Since I had nothing of my own, they accused me of being a jealous liar who was attempting to destroy Mickey's life and marriage. They accused me of fabricating terrible stories about my brother's fiancée in order to ruin their wedding, claiming they had always known I was bitter over his success. It was a horrible message. They declared that I was repulsive and that they no longer wished to interact with me. They were obviously duped by Na, and they trusted her more than their own son. Nothing I said would persuade them otherwise. I didn't communicate with my brother, parents, or the rest of the family for the following 5 years. They saw me as someone who, out of insecurity, had attempted to destroy Mickey's marriage. I was sick of trying, and there was nothing I could do to alter their perception of me. I decided to let it go. I was really distressed about what was occurring with my family, which made the first 5 years challenging. At first, I was depressed, but I eventually recovered. I'm doing fairly well for myself now. Since I've been in the business for years, my copywriting job pays higher, and my name is now more recognizable. I've realized how toxic my family was to me, therefore I'm happy with what I have and don't even miss them. They just came to my house and asked me to testify in family court on my brother's behalf, but I flatly refused. After everything they said to me and the way they have treated me for as long as I can remember, I don't believe I owe them anything. Nevertheless, my friends think I'll come to regret this choice. They believe that rather than excluding my family entirely, I should give them a chance, speak with them, and attempt to resolve the issue. Naturally, my family has done all in their power to make me regret my choice. They have been accusing me of being cold-hearted and self-centered in their emails and letters. They've even attempted to defend their behavior by claiming that they had good reason to ignore me and think Na was superior to me at the time. As much as I hate to say it, I can see their argument. As I previously stated, if my parents made a comparison between myself and my brother, I had a propensity to snap at them. This, of course, convinced my parents that I hated Mickey. They were so tempted to believe Na when she said that I was fabricating tales about her in order to destroy Mickey's life. Not that they were correct, but my remarks throughout those arguments weren't particularly polite either. In retrospect, I can see why they initially thought that the answer was no. Furthermore, I didn't really defend myself either. I didn't strive to support my version of events and instead let things go. Since they thought I had been lying, they naturally didn't get in touch with me for the following 5 years, until they learned about Na's extramarital escapades. This past contributes to my current sense of guilt. I really think that if we had all tried, we could have resolved the issue as a family, but none of us did. I'm included in it. This is the cause of my conflict. My friends' words that this might be my only opportunity to repair my ties with my family are still ringing in my ears. Particularly when the family is as toxic as mine, I am aware that people frequently claim they can live without them. However, I can't get rid of the notion that by declining to assist, I'm committing a grave error. I truly need to know whether I'm wrong for not testifying in court on my brother's behalf. Update. After careful consideration, I have chosen not to testify on Mickey's behalf. This is not something I must do. I've gotten by quite fine without my family for the past 5 years, so I don't even need to mend our relationship. I have no doubt that my family would not have contacted me if it weren't for the divorce and child support disagreements. For the past few months, Mickey and Na have been going through the divorce procedure. They were aware that I had been speaking the truth about Na's affair at the time, so it's not like they were unaware. Until they required my assistance, they simply didn't think it was essential enough to get in touch with me. Mickey learned about the affair a few months ago when he discovered Na messaging Jacob. Na maintains that the affair has barely lasted a year, saying it began when she felt ignored by Mickey, who had been preoccupied with his job. But a few weeks ago, their 1-year-old kid underwent a court-ordered paternity test, and the results showed that the youngster is not Mickey's. After the divorce, Mickey has understandably refused to pay child support. Na, however, maintains that since he has been the child's father for the past year and not Jacob, he should keep providing for the child monetarily. I can help with this. To demonstrate that Na's affair with Jacob has been going on for more than a year, since before they were married, Mickey and my parents want me to testify in court. They require my testimony to back their claim that Jacob, Mickey's biological father, should assume responsibility and avoid paying child support. It's all quite intricate. In the end, Mickey and my parents have been aware of Na's affair for some months. They never bothered to contact me until they required my assistance, even though they knew I was telling the truth. I've been struggling with this discovery for the past few days. I finally came to the conclusion that I owed them nothing. I've had enough of them and can carry on avoiding them, as I have for the last 5 years. None of their frantic emails or messages have received a response from me. I don't even think I should. I have, however, discussed this matter with my friends, who were the ones who urged me to try to make amends and get back in touch with my family. Naturally, they wanted me to have no regrets and had my best interest in mind. Nevertheless, I felt compelled to inform them of my choice. I could see my buddies weren't totally on board when I gave them my justification. I didn't owe them an explanation, but I went into detail nevertheless. I made this decision because, following my breakup with my family 5 years ago, these people have supported me. They have my sincere gratitude for their assistance. I told them what I knew about my family's poisonous behavior and how I had been handled by them in the past. This time, I went into detail, even though they had a rough notion of what transpired. Because it was so personal and I detested reliving those experiences, I had previously avoided talking about it. However, I thought they should know how deeply it all impacted me. I opened up about everything, including the taunts and charges I encountered after telling my family the truth about Na. I also clarified that my family has only contacted me at this time because they require my assistance. They never will, and they never did appreciate me as a person. They haven't bothered to apologize for their actions even though they have known for months that I was speaking the truth. They have been defensive, but they haven't really apologized as of yet. They even tricked me for a second since I was thinking about their perspective. Ultimately, though, they ought to have trusted their son over Na, but they didn't. So be it if it costs them now. I'm unable to stop it. Back then, Mickey and my parents didn't care that I was trying to warn them. Instead, they excluded me from their life and insulted me. Going back to these people would be wrong, and I will never longer injure myself in that way. That's the reason I'm staying away. My friends reassured me that they would back my decision after I told them how I felt. They concur that I've made the best choice for me now that they are aware of the full circumstances and my feelings. We are getting along well, and for that I am quite thankful. Second update. My family first arrived at my place 2 weeks ago, pleading with me to assist them. They chose to get in touch with me once more today because I didn't reply to their emails or messages. I was at home, and it was the weekend. In the afternoon, the doorbell began to ring constantly. When I looked out, my family was there. I made the decision to let the bell ring for a few minutes while I pretended to be away from home. However, rather than going, my father became irate, claiming to be aware that I was at home and insisting that I speak with them. I'm not sure how he deduced that, but I didn't respond. He insisted that I open the door and continued to shout outside for a few more minutes. He and Mickey eventually began pressing as hard as they could against the door, and I was worried that they may shatter it. All I could do was stand up and open the door. I was already somewhat irritated by that point. I didn't want to have to contact the police, and I had been quite clear that I wanted to be left alone. I didn't want to cope with the hassle that would come with living in a great neighborhood. I strongly informed them that I had already made up my decision and that I didn't want to talk to them when I opened the door. I refused to assist them. It wasn't even about personal grudges at this point. All I wanted was to avoid them, and they had to accept that. I wasn't going to change my opinion by coming to my house. On the contrary, it only made me feel worse. Mickey begged me, but my parents remained silent. He claimed that because he didn't think it was just for him to pay child support for a child that wasn't his, he truly needed my assistance. I should help him, he said, because we are relatives. That's when I started laughing. We had been anything but family for the past 5 years, but now they wanted to behave like we were family again just because they needed my assistance. I curtly informed Mickey that we couldn't merely act like family when it suited them. I told them to go since I no longer regarded them as family. My parents went crazy right away, so I suppose they didn't appreciate my tone. My mom informed me that I had no right to talk to them in that manner since, in spite of everything, they were still my parents and had reared me, therefore I owed them everything. My dad had began ranting at me. I retaliated, of course, and a few minutes later we were yelling at each other again. We might have continued much longer if it weren't for Mickey. Fortunately, he was able to stop them both. Then, unexpectedly, he turned to face me and started begging. He acknowledged that he wasn't always the best brother, but he stated that if I helped him now, he would owe me a huge debt. Mickey said that he didn't really want children and that it wasn't right for him to provide for an unfaithful wife and an unborn child. It all seemed dramatic, but I could tell he was desperate and really depended on me when he said that I was the only person who could stop this injustice. But after the argument I'd just had with my parents, I had no interest in assisting any of them at the moment. I threatened to call the police if they didn't leave. I closed the door after that. In the end, they did depart. After this, I really don't have anything more to say to them, so even though I'm not sure whether I did the right thing, I hope they leave me alone. I'm sorry for Mickey. Perhaps our relationship would have been completely different if our parents had been better parents. I'm not claiming Mickey was faultless or flawless, but I can't help but feel sad for him given his current predicament. He could have completely averted this situation if he had simply paid attention to my warnings. I still believe that our parents destroyed his life. Mickey might have been able to persuade me to assist if they hadn't treated me so terribly. However, the harm has already been done. Even though I genuinely hope Mickey is exempt from paying child support since, morally speaking, Na doesn't deserve it, I will not be assisting him. That's saying something because I hate Na even more than I hate my parents. I firmly believe that it is unethical for Mickey to be required to pay child support for a child that is not his. I'll stay out of it, but I hope things work out for him. Third update. Since my last update, which was 3 months ago, not much noteworthy has transpired. My parents have made multiple attempts to contact me, but they have yet to offer an apology. Rather, I've received emails informing me that my refusal to assist Mickey is a grave error. As if that would convince me otherwise, they even admitted that they are embarrassed to refer to me as their son. They were continuously disparaging me in their emails, and eventually it became tiresome, so I stopped reading them. They kept making new accounts solely to irritate me, not because I hadn't tried to block them, I very certainly had. In any case, I found it easy to overlook because I didn't give a damn. After a while, I became preoccupied with my job once more and stopped caring about it. I just learned about Mickey's custody battle and my parents via a cousin whose mother is close to my parents. This cousin and I have always gotten along, so she has been keeping me informed even though I haven't been in contact with most of my relatives. She informed me last week that Mickey would not be required to pay child support. Jacob has made the decision to become a father to his child after much deliberation. Jacob wasn't ready to commit at first, but Na made it plain that she would leave him if he didn't take the initiative and become a father. As my brother predicted, Jacob had, of course, been in contact with her all along and had met his biological kid multiple times. Although he didn't want to commit to anything, he did have a bond with his son. I suppose he finally consented to her requirements because he was afraid of losing Na. I've heard that Jacob and Na intend to tie the knot as soon as her divorce is finalized. They have begun to accept all of Mickey's demands in an effort to move things forward more quickly. But I already know that Na won't make it through this since no relationship ever survives an ultimatum. In any case, that will be her karma, and I don't give a damn. The fact that Mickey is leaving this mess makes me pleased. I hope that we can get back together someday, but I don't think my parents will allow it to happen as long as they are here. However, I don't really care about it. These things no longer have an impact on me, and I'm content with my life. I stopped supporting my brother's family after he said, "No place for losers." That's why I wasn't invited to Christmas. Now he's losing it. In fact, I was excited for Christmas this year. I wasn't rushing to finish everything at the last minute for once. I had purchased gifts for my parents, my brother Jacob, his wife Kelly, and their children before the first week of December. I even purchased extra presents in case there were any unannounced visitors. I have no idea why, but I had the impression that this year would be successful. I was really taken aback when my mom opened the door and said, "We don't want you here this year." As I was standing on my parents' front porch holding a bag of wrapped gifts in each hand. At first, I assumed it was a strange joke. I began to chuckle, but Jacob's voice interrupted her from behind. His words, "This is no place for losers. You're really starting to wear on all of us." I simply stood there and gazed at her. My dad was in the background, staring nervously everywhere except at me without saying a word. Despite her uneasy appearance, my mother didn't retreat. And Jacob was utterly arrogant. I had a flurry of feelings, including humiliation, rage, and perplexity. However, I managed to remain composed. "Fine, if that's how you feel," I said, nodding, and then I made my way back to my car. Something inside of me changed as I sat in the driveway and gazed at the bags of gifts in the passenger seat. No place for losers? Tired of me? From where did this originate? I suspected Jacob was responsible, but I was unable to determine why. Over the years, I had shown him and his family nothing but generosity. I had paid for his children's summer camp tuition, school supplies, and even his mortgage when he needed it most. And now, suddenly, I wasn't invited to Christmas? I made the decision not to go just yet. To gain some answers, I was heading back to the door. I returned after leaving the gifts in the car. As though they hadn't anticipated my return, my parents were still standing there, chatting in low voices. Jacob was pretending nothing had happened as he sat on the couch and browsed through his phone. I chose not to knock. "What's going on?" I said as I entered. "Why am I not welcome at Christmas? What did I do?" Without raising his eyes from his phone, Jacob smiled. "You really don't get it, do you? You've been slacking off lately. The kids have barely gotten anything from you this year." Stunned, I gazed at him. "What are you talking about? I've spent hundreds on presents for your kids. They have more presents in the car than anyone else. Last year, you did more. This year, it's like you don't care. It's embarrassing for us, honestly," Jacob said, turning to face me at last. I looked to my parents, thinking they would say something, perhaps defend me or warn Jacob that he was acting inappropriately. Rather than that, my mother smiled awkwardly and remarked, "But you just bought a new car. You found money for it." I wasn't even sure how to react for a moment. "The car is on credit," I stated, maintaining a steady tone. "And even if it wasn't, how does buying a car suddenly make me responsible for Jacob's kids? They're not my responsibility." Jacob leaned back on the couch and declared, "You're the one who makes the most money," as though everything had been explained. "We're a family. Families help each other. You've always done that." His wife, Kelly, was sitting calmly in the corner when I glanced at her. Her face was hot, and she was looking down at her hands without saying anything. It was as though she wished to vanish. I questioned, "Is that your reasoning? Because I've been generous in the past, I'm now obligated to do so forever? And if I don't, I'm a loser?" Jacob gave a shrug. "If the shoe fits." For me, that was it. I shook my head and stepped back. I turned to face my parents and said, "You know what? You're right. I don't belong here." Turning to Jacob, I said, "Enjoy your Christmas. And good luck with those presents, because this loser is done financing your life." Without waiting for a response, I left. I gripped the wheel more tightly than I had to and drove silently home. I was unable to comprehend it. Was I the villain in this situation? For years, I had gone above and beyond for my family, always helping Jacob when he needed it and ensuring that his children never suffered because of his financial difficulties. And now I was a loser for not doing enough, in addition to being unwelcome at Christmas. I spent some time sitting in the driveway after I arrived home, staring at nothing. I felt sick to my stomach when I saw the bag of gifts that was still in the van. I had spent weeks choosing the ideal items, considering what my parents would value and what the children would enjoy. And for what? I wasn't supposed to be here? It became more apparent to me as I gave it more thought. This went beyond Christmas and gifts. I had been too blind, or perhaps too willing, to notice that this had been developing for years. The fact was that Jacob had always relied on me. He and Kelly had a difficult financial beginning to their marriage. He struggled to maintain a consistent job, and Kelly's part-time job hardly provided for their basic needs. With the assumption that it would only be for a short time, a few hundred here, a few hundred there, I volunteered to help. Once, when they were in danger of being evicted, I assisted with the rent. Later, when their second child was born, I helped with childcare. A little while became years, however. Jacob always called me first when he was having a bad day. To be honest, I always said yes because I cared for his kids, not because I had to. I didn't want to see my brother and his family suffer, and I didn't want them to be without. In retrospect, I saw that I had produced this dynamic. Jacob relied on me too easily because of me. It became entitlement somewhere along the line and ceased to be thankfulness. The final straw was being excluded from my own family's Christmas celebration tonight because I didn't do enough. I decided I was done when I woke up the following morning with more clarity. Don't help Jacob any longer. No more incessant presents to compensate for his inefficiency. He could decide for himself if he wanted his children to have the items I had given them. Making the choice wasn't simple. Not only would I lose my brother's financial support, but I would also jeopardize my connection with him, his kids, and possibly even my parents. However, I couldn't continue to be treated more like an ATM than a brother and son. They didn't contact me, and I didn't contact anyone. Perhaps they received the message, I thought. However, I should have known Jacob wouldn't take it so lightly. New Year's Eve was spent in complete silence. No texts, no phone calls, nothing. My parents, Jacob, and even Kelly didn't get back to me. I was all alone over the holidays for the first time in years. Although I didn't anticipate them contacting me, it was an odd sensation when midnight passed and my phone was still silent. I'll admit that I considered phoning, but every time I did, I thought of Jacob's sneer and his statement, "No place for losers." I had been the one keeping things together for years, and they had the gall to treat me as though I were disposable. I would give them distance if that was what they desired. I started to notice a change by the middle of January. Kelly has always been a reserved individual who shied away from confrontation. However, she unexpectedly texted me one evening. It was succinct and direct. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I don't agree with what happened. Jacob won't hear it from me, but I thought you should know." Unsure of how to react, I sat for a while looking at my phone. The fact that someone in the family recognized things for what they were was comforting, on the one hand. However, Kelly's apology suddenly seemed like too little, too late because she had not spoken that evening. At last, I responded, "I appreciate it, Kelly, but this isn't something I can just move on from." I didn't mind that she didn't continue the topic. The surprise visit. Then, in early February, Jacob unexpectedly arrived at my residence. When I heard the knock on the door, I was in the middle of a work meeting. I initially disregarded it as I wasn't expecting anyone. However, the knocking continued. Jacob was there when I eventually opened the door, and he looked more unkempt and irritated than I had ever seen him. Before I could stop him, he remarked, "We need to talk," and went inside. I folded my arms. "What's this about?" He was direct and concise. "You need to stop acting like this and start helping out again." I laughed because I couldn't believe he meant it, not because I thought it was amusing. "Helping out? You mean pay for your life? I told you, I'm done with that." He gave me a scowl. "You're the one with the money. Do you know how hard it's been for us since you decided to act like this? The kids barely have what they need. Kelly's trying to keep it together, but we can't do it without your help." What I was hearing was unbelievable. Are you listening to yourself right now? You're a grown man, Jacob. You have a wife and children. If you need more money, go out and earn it. It's not my job to solve your problems. He retorted. "You've always helped before. Why are you being so selfish now?" "Selfish?" I said again. "You want to talk about being selfish? Let's talk about how you lied to our parents about me, turned them against me, and then banned me from Christmas because I didn't spend enough on your kids. And now you're here asking for more? You've got some nerve, Jacob." I interrupted him by raising a hand before he could say anything further. "We're done here. I'm not giving you another dime, and I don't want to hear from you again until you figure out how to act like an adult." He glared at me as he stood there for a while before hurriedly leaving. I assumed that would be the last of it for a while once Jacob stormed out. He would grumble to my parents, but he would soon realize that I wouldn't give up. I was mistaken. I received a call from an unfamiliar number 2 days later. I wouldn't have answered normally, but I felt compelled to do so. "Hello?" A man's voice said. "Is this Michael?" "Yeah, who's this?" "This is Mark Dawson. I'm a lawyer. I represent a client who has recently expressed concern about certain financial matters involving your family. Do you have a moment to discuss them?" I went cold. "An attorney? What are the financial issues?" In an unduly courteous tone, he stated, "I can't go into detail over the phone. But it involves financial contributions you've made to your brother Jacob and his family. Specifically, your use of those contributions. Would you be willing to come to my office for a discussion?" I was at a loss for words. There were a lot of options in my head, but none of them were good. Had Jacob borrowed money under my name? Was he up to no good with my information? Or was this a last-ditch effort to scare me into handing him money once more? "Who's your client?" I inquired at last. There was a moment's silence. "I'm afraid I can't disclose that right now, but I assure you, this is not a lawsuit against you. It's more of an investigation." I consented to a meeting against my better judgment. My curiosity overcame me, and I couldn't get rid of the impression that this was more than just Jacob being himself. The following day, I had no idea what to anticipate as I entered Mark Dawson's office. But he dropped a bombshell as soon as I sat down. He pushed a packet across the desk toward me and stated, "Kelly is the client I'm representing." I was so surprised that I blinked. "Kelly? Why would she need a lawyer?" Mark studied me intently while folding his hands. "She thinks Jacob's been using the money you've given him over the years inappropriately. She has reason to believe he's been hiding money, from her and from you." I felt sick to my stomach. "Hiding money? What do you mean?" Copies of bank statements, receipts, and what appeared to be screenshots of text messages were visible when he opened the folder. "She suspects that Jacob has been taking your financial contributions and funneling them into a separate account. Based on what she found, he may have been using the money for gambling and other personal expenses instead of supporting his family." I gazed incredulously at the paperwork. "You're saying all those times I helped him with bills, with his kids' school stuff, that money never went to them?" Mark gave a serious nod. "It seems that way. Kelly discovered this recently and came to me because she didn't know what to do. She didn't want to involve you at first, but given the circumstances, she thought you should know." What I was hearing was unbelievable. All along, Jacob had been deceiving me by spending money I believed would benefit his family on unspecified expenses. For not recognizing it sooner, I wasn't sure if I should feel deceived, angry, or just foolish. My voice was strained as I questioned, "Does Kelly have proof? Take a look for yourself." Mark nodded and moved the folder closer to me. The proof. I looked over the papers. There were withdrawals from Jacob's account, significant amounts moving to a different account in his name, and transfers from my account to his, which corresponded with the times I had assisted him with emergencies. I observed transactions from that account, including visits to pricey dining establishments, internet gambling sites, and even a few hotel stays. Unbelievable, I shook my head and mumbled. And Kelly knew about this? She only recently discovered the second account, Mark clarified. She had suspicions for a while, but she didn't have access to his banking information. Until she stumbled across some bank statements he'd left out, she didn't have proof. That's when she contacted me. I tried to absorb everything as I sat back. Does she want me to do anything? Press charges or something? Mark gave a headshake. Not at this point. She's more focused on protecting herself and the children, but she thought you should know in case Jacob tries to manipulate you further. I laughed resentfully. Well, he already tried. He showed up at my house a few days ago demanding that I start helping again. Mark looked at me irritably. That goes along with what Kelly told me. It seems Jacob is feeling the pressure now that your financial support has stopped. He may be in even deeper trouble than Kelly knows. As I gazed at the folder, my thoughts were racing. A part of me wanted to go to Jacob's house and confront him, but I also knew that would only make him feel good because he had irritated me. I said, "What's Kelly up to?" instead. Mark paused before responding. She's considering her options. She wants to make sure she and the kids are safe, financially and otherwise. If Jacob's behavior escalates, she may file for separation or take other legal action. I was more affected by hearing this than I had anticipated. Kelly had always given off the impression of being a gentle, devoted person who would always be there for Jacob. I could tell how horrible things had gone if even she was eager to leave. With a mix of feelings, angry at Jacob, sad for Kelly and the children, and guilty for not seeing sooner how far this had gone, I thanked Mark for his time and walked out of the office. Above all, though, I experienced an odd sense of relaxation. This was the first time in years that I wasn't bearing Jacob's burden. And now that I was aware of the reality, I would never again allow him to control me. The request, I couldn't stop thinking about all I had just discovered after leaving the lawyer's office, the gaming, the hidden money, and Kelly subtly plotting her next move. I was in the center of my family's drama, which was similar to a soap opera. I stayed away for the next few days. I didn't give my parents a call, and I didn't get in touch with Jacob either. However, it seems that he didn't like the quiet because one evening, as I was ready to have supper, his name appeared on my phone. I thought about leaving it on voicemail, but I felt compelled to answer it. "What do you want, Jacob?" He wasted no time at all. He said, "We need to talk." In a strained, almost desperate voice. "You said something to Kelly, didn't you?" I arched an eyebrow. "What are you talking about?" "Don't act foolish," he yelled. "She's been acting weird since Christmas, and now she's bringing up lawyers and separation. I know you've been putting ideas in her head." I couldn't contain my laughter. "You think I'm the problem? You're the one who lied to her, hid money, and gambled it away? If she's tired of your crap, that's on you. Not me." After a pause, Jacob eventually spoke the words, "You don't know what you're talking about." I responded, "Oh, I think I do." As my rage boiled up. "Kelly told me everything, the secret account, the gambling, the money you've been wasting while I've been breaking my back trying to help you." "You're a joke, Jacob." I interrupted him before he could finish his shout, saying, "Here's the thing," I interrupted him. Before he could respond, I hung up. My hands were shaking, but it felt good to finally say what I'd been holding in for years. "You've used me for the last time. I'm done helping you. I'm done covering for you. If Kelly leaves you, that's on you. And if you try to drag me into this mess again, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what you've been up to." The backlash was quick, and Kelly called me the following day. "Has Jacob given you a call?" With caution, she asked. "Yes," I replied. He wasn't content. "Has something taken place?" "I confronted him about the gambling and the hidden account," she said after hesitating. "He acknowledged some of it, but he is still making an effort to downplay it." "Are you all right?" I inquired. Despite not hearing it, she answered, "I'm fine." But she was sick of defending him. "The children are worthy of better." I knew things were terrible between them, but hearing her say that felt like the beginning of the end, and it impacted me harder than I thought it would. "Whatever you decide to do, you have my support," I replied. "Thank you," she said softly. "And I apologize for everything. The way we treated you over Christmas wasn't fair. I ought to have spoken up sooner." We spoke for a while, and when we hung up, I felt a weird sense of closure. Although Jacob had ruined our relationship, Kelly and the children weren't my enemies, and I wouldn't be angry with her if she had the courage to confront him. Nevertheless, I couldn't get rid of the feeling that Jacob wasn't finished causing trouble. Kelly sent me a brief text message a few weeks later, consisting of only 3 words. We're going today. She told me she was moving to another state with the kids while Jacob was out of town on a business trip, which I figured was just another excuse for gambling, and that she had packed up their belongings, rented a moving van, and left without telling him, at least not until she had everything sorted out legally. I called her right away. I just couldn't stay any longer, she stated gently. I can't keep pretending this is normal. What about everything, even the rent? Sincerely interested in how she was doing, I inquired. I was hoping you could help me with that, just for a little while, she said after a pause. As much as I hate to ask. Say no more, I said. I'll take care of it. So, yes, I did end up helping her and the kids, but for the first time in years, I felt like I was finally doing the right thing and not being used. When Jacob returned home to find the house deserted, he naturally went completely mad and called me to vent about how I had ruined his life and turned Kelly against him. After letting him vent for a while, I said, perhaps this wouldn't have occurred if you had spent more time as a husband and father and less time gaming. I hung up after saying, but hey, good luck with that. The children are adjusting to their new school, Kelly has secured a stable career, and she is at last beginning to feel in charge of her life again. I've heard that Jacob continues to blame everyone but himself, but in all honesty, it's no longer my problem. Then, if you can call it that, you have your happy ending. Am I the asshole for not allowing my mother to bring her boyfriend I don't know or want to know to my wedding? I, 33, am not close with my mother, 55F, at all. She divorced my dad, 60, when I was 7 and almost immediately married my stepfather, Mark, whom despite everything, I was close with. They remained married until I was 16. I was upset when she divorced him and went to live with my dad and stepmom. In my adult life, I've chosen to remain close to my stepdad and even attended his wedding to his current wife, who is a very nice woman. My dad and my stepmom are great people. Since her divorce to my stepdad, my mom has been in and out of relationships, each time claiming this guy is the love of her life until they do something she doesn't like and they aren't the love of her life anymore. Both divorces with my dad and my stepdad were for very petty reasons. Dad, I think because he wouldn't allow her to get a new car because the budget was tight. I think the one that lasted the longest was 6 years and I think it's the current guy she's with, according to my sister. After I left home, she never did anything with me without her boyfriends. When I was 25, she broke up with her boyfriend and tried to cry to me about it. After working with my therapist, I set the boundary with my mother that if she wasn't willing to do anything with me without her boyfriend to not bother and I didn't want to talk about her love life. She was very hurt and we fell out for a while but she came back around a year later and has respected my rules since, but we only get together about 3 or 4 times per year. I understand that my mom's relationships and love life are important to her so I respect that we don't get together often. Fast forward to this year, I'm getting married to my partner, 35M, of a decade in October. It's a small intimate backyard wedding and reception, BBQ. We live in a rural area and our backyard wedding will have roughly 40 people. My dad, stepmom, stepdad and his new wife have all been invited. My mom asked if she could bring her boyfriend. I said no because I don't know him. My mom asked if she could bring him to meet me so I could meet him before the wedding. I said no and that I still had no interest in meeting her boyfriends. She said she understood but she felt it was unfair that I wasn't allowing her a +1 to my wedding when my dad and my stepdad were allowed to bring their spouses. I told her that the difference was that I knew their spouses. She wanted to know why I was so adamant about refusing to get to know her boyfriend. I explained to her that I saw no need since she'd just break up with them and move on to someone else eventually as she has always done before. She started to cry and told me I was being unreasonable and treating her as if she's a witch ****. Both my fiancé and my sister feel like I should suck it up for one day and let her bring her boyfriend so she can be comfortable there. I'm seriously considering it but I wanted to know if I'm TA here for sticking to my boundary at my wedding and what your thoughts are. Update. After reading everything here, I've decided to email my mother and invite him. I was already leaning towards telling her that he can come when I post it. I decided to set some ground rules for my mother. He is there as a +1 to my mother only. I made it clear to her that he is not my family and he is not my stepfather, so I will appreciate her not telling other people at the wedding he is my stepfather. Mark is my stepfather and he will be there. He is not to be in any family photos. In fairness, my stepdad Mark won't be in any family photos either, only my mom, dad, stepmom, and my siblings. He is not to approach me at any point during the wedding and reception. This does not change my previous boundaries. I'm only allowing him to come for her own comfort and to create a sense of fairness. I respect the fact she is in a relationship but that her love life has nothing to do with me and I wish to keep it that way. I told my mother that these are my terms for him being at my wedding and my terms are final and that I hope she can respect the fact that I'm trying to be reasonable. I used this opportunity to remind her of the reasons I put the boundary up in the first place. These reasons included forcing me to do activities with her shorter-term boyfriends in the past, forcing me to only discuss her love life while showing no interest in my life, and putting her relationships above her own children. If she responds, I'll let everyone know. Update 2. My mom called me within 10 minutes of getting the email. She thanked me for allowing him to come and said they would abide by my terms. She said she felt really hurt that her actions during her midlife crisis are why I'm refusing to meet her current boyfriend, who she says she's been with for 7.5 years, and that she thought things would eventually calm down enough where I would be comfortable meeting him. She said she now realizes that it will never happen. I told her that I'm firm on my stance. I think she started to cry, but she said she understood and only wants him there because being around my dad and stepdad and their new wives, my dad has been married for 23 years and my stepdad for 12, makes her anxious and he helps keep her calm. She said she respects my stance and said it's her own fault I feel this way. I felt this may be the start of a guilt trip, so I politely ended the call. Verdict: not the asshole. Additional comments to the post from OP. Update. I will update here since Mods told me I was maxed on my post. I want to thank everyone here for commenting and giving their opinions. Without context, I think it's a little hard to understand why I'm the way I am towards my mother. This past has given me a chance to reflect on my own behavior towards my mother. The truth of it is, I find dealing with her to be exhausting and I want to explain to everyone why. My mom is a gold digger. And that isn't my dad or stepdad talking shit about my mom. They're classy guys and would never do that. This is my own conclusion. My mom said regarding both divorces, I'd still be married if dad or stepdad just gave me what I wanted. She's also tried to start fights with my stepmom because she realizes my brother and I prefer her over our actual mom. It's true, I'm closer with my stepmom. I go to her for all the mom things because she listens and cares. My stepmom doesn't make everything about her. I believe my mom suffers from main character syndrome and expects to be the center of attention at every event, and if she isn't, she gets drunk, which leads me to my next point. My mom is an alcoholic. She was in a DUI 8 years ago and crashed into another car. Thank goodness no one was hurt. She doesn't drive anymore, lives in the city an hour away and uses public transportation, but she still drinks a lot. At her height, she drank roughly 3 bottles of wine per day. I don't really know or care if it's more or less now. One of the other boundaries I set is I won't be around her if she's been drinking because that just stresses me out more. I'll be honest, I'm anticipating she's going to cause a drunken scene at my wedding. She slept with my brother's best friend 8 years ago when they were 21. This was a boy who my brother had known since preschool, and this ruined the friendship. 8 years on and my brother will never forgive her for it. My mom thinks my brother needs to get over himself and that she did nothing wrong. Technically speaking, she didn't do anything illegal and everyone was a consenting adult, but it still felt so wrong that she slept with someone my brother was so close with. It's why I don't really want my partner around her. She dates younger guys. This current boyfriend is 10 years younger than her, which is a little better. I don't judge her for dating younger guys, that's okay. It's not okay to sleep with someone you watched grow up. This whole post helped me see just how exhausted I am by her. I realized I don't want to deal with her BS anymore. I also agree that I have maybe at times shown it by being TA and being unfair and unreasonable towards her. I just don't like myself when dealing with her. It puts me in a bad mood. However, the idea of having her more in my life makes me nauseous, but I want to keep the peace with the larger family, grandparents, aunt, uncle, etc. I've decided to take a page from my youngest brother's book and keep contact with just family functions. He's cordial to her at family events and keeps the peace when he's around her, but he keeps his distance and won't see her outside of a family event. So I'm going to do the same. I realize she could get sober, go to therapy, and change her entire life around, but I'm still going to see the woman who drinks all the time, sleeps with my brother's friend and just treats people like garbage. It's not fair to anyone. Not me for having dealt with her, and not her if she ever did or was actively working hard to change her life. I do want to make sure she's taken care of, fine and healthy, but I also want to not be emotionally involved anymore. Figuring that out is above Reddit's pay grade. Relevant comments from OOP, resident_test_2107. Honestly, I think you need to distinguish the hurt you felt as a kid when she broke up with your two father figures from what would happen now if they broke up. You're an adult, not a kid. Her breakups are her business, and don't impact you directly. Expecting someone to come to a wedding with her two exes there with their new wives is a lot. Expecting her to suck it up to put you first feels like you're trying to play out some drama and feelings you have left over from feeling hurt and abandoned as a kid by her breaking up your home. Divorce happens, it sucks for the kids, but so does an unhappy marriage. Feels like time to go back to therapy. OP, in my early 20s, she used to call me whenever she had a breakup and expected my sister and me to be emotionally supportive. She wouldn't spend time with me without her BFS around. She was insisting I meet some guy, who typically is a lot younger than her, like late 20s, or early 30s, which is good on her but still weird for me. She was dating for a few weeks. They'd break up after a year and she'd immediately find someone new. Wash, rinse, repeat. This was the pattern from when I was 19, 25. I always had to spend time with both of them. All she would talk about is her relationship. She would never ask me about school, my job, or my relationship. She's only met my partner twice. There's a lot more I can add about how my mom constantly prioritized her relationships over being a parent, but they aren't pertinent to this story. She got with a really toxic guy when I was 24 who stole a bunch of money from her. We all warned her he was a scumbag, but she didn't listen. After that, I told her I wanted nothing to do with her boyfriends going forward. She got really mad, saying I was disrespectful and that any child should want to see her mother happy. But I just got tired of dealing with her relationship drama and I don't ever want to deal with it again. I'm sure the guy she's with is nice since he's been around this long, but I'm just done. I don't want to be around my mother, but I want to be around family. August 28, 2023. I've decided to estrange myself from my mother. We haven't gotten along since I was 16 and the last several years have been really bad. We only get together about 2-4 times per year and it always ends with us fighting. I'm tired of it. I'll be honest. I've considered cutting contact with her, but the one thing that's preventing me from fully severing ties is her parents, my grandparents. I love them very much and they are still hurting from my brother choosing to sever ties with her and keeping in low contact with that side of the family. My brother had valid reasons for doing this to her and he will get together with my grandparents if my mother isn't there, but it's hard because they want to see him at the holidays and during special moments. I'm getting married in Oct and this will be the first event where my mom and brother are in the same area. I've told both of them to stay away from each other, but I'm anticipating there will be drama because my mom doesn't like to hear she can't do something. I want to make it so we can see each other and be cordial at family events but not hang out otherwise. My youngest brother does something similar. I don't want to write her a letter because I fear that will cause more drama, but I expect she'll eventually call and want to do something with me, but I want to say no unless it's at a larger family function. How should I do this? My mother thinks she's entitled to alcohol at my wedding, September 23, 2023. My fiancé, 35M, and I, 33NB, are getting married in 2 weeks in our backyard. We will be having a catering spread for our reception afterwards. We decided to have a dry wedding for 2 reasons. My mom is an alcoholic who is known for making a scene when she gets drunk, and my fiancé has a brother who binge drinks and has had alcohol poisoning on more than one occasion. He doesn't drink all the time, but if he starts he can't stop until he either passes out or someone physically restrains him from getting more. I also have an uncle, mom's brother, and a stepdad who are in recovery and don't need the temptation. Neither fiancé and I are big drinkers, so we decided to just avoid any problems and just have a dry wedding. We will have a less dry reception party, honeymoon with some of our friends later on. All of our families have been supportive. My uncle was especially grateful to us for doing this since he takes his recovery very seriously and has been 7 years sober. I sent out wedding invitations 4 months ago and said it would be a dry wedding and asked people not to bring alcohol. Now today I get this call from my mom, who I also sent an invitation to 4 months ago. Mom, is it true you're not having alcohol at your wedding? Me, yes. Fiancé and I decided we didn't want alcohol during our special time. Mom, that's so silly. It's going to make your wedding boring. Me, well, I'm sorry you feel that way, but and I have made our decision. We want everyone to feel comfortable at our wedding. Mom, clearly you don't care about my comfort. What if I want to have a little drink to pass the time? Me, like you did at a different uncle's wedding where you got so drunk and made a horrible scene calling uncle's wife a gold digger. Mom, it wasn't my fault. They made the drinks there too strong. Me, right. I really wish you would address this need to have alcohol wherever you go. Mom, I don't need to have alcohol. I just think your wedding will be boring without it. You want to have a fun wedding, don't you? Me, it will be a fun wedding. We don't need alcohol to have fun. Mom, this is so stupid. Why should everyone else be punished just to make it comfortable for a few people? It seems like you care more about uncle and stepdad than anyone else. Me, Or maybe I just want to avoid any scenes. Mom, I just told you that wasn't my fault. Me, just like your DUI isn't your fault? Mom, how dare you bring up that difficult time in my life? I was going through a lot emotionally. What the hell is wrong with you kids? You need to mind your own business. If I want to drink, that's my business. Me, well, my wedding is my business. We do not want alcohol there. That's final. I can't stop you if you decide to pregame my wedding, but I've already made it clear to uncles and brothers that if you cause a scene that you are to be made to leave. Mom starts crying. Why do you kids hate me so much? What did I ever do to deserve to be treated like this by my children? Me, are you really ready for me to go down that list? Mom, none of you understand. None of you will ever understand. I'm the mother of the bride, I should be treated better than this. Me, I think I've treated you pretty well during this process. I've acquiesced to your boyfriend whom I don't even know coming to my wedding. I've even given in to some of your other demands. So please tell me how you've been mistreated. Mom, you didn't invite me to go dress shopping. The mother of the bride always goes dress shopping with her daughter. I barely know because you never bring him around me. How do I know that you're marrying the right person? Me, that's because Aunt made my dress. Mom, sarcastically. Well, isn't that just special? Me, sighing. As for the rest, I think you know why. We aren't really close enough for you to have any say in who my significant other is. Honestly, Mom, I'm done with this conversation. If you really feel that strongly about this, I'll understand if you don't want to attend my wedding. Mom. Oh, I bet you'd like that, wouldn't you? One way or another you will respect me as your mother. Me? Sure, Mom. I'm hanging up now. Bye. Guys, I'm so livid right now. I have half a mind to uninvite her. I spoke to my dad and her brother. My uncle thinks her drinking is getting really bad again and has been wanting to hold an intervention. I told him I'm focused on the wedding right now, but that I definitely agree this was out of line and something needs to be done. What should I do? I don't want her ruining my wedding, but I'm so tired of dealing with this. Sorry, this is probably above Reddit's pay grade, but I just needed to vent. Update, I sent a text reiterating the rules. She said she knows where she isn't welcome and said she won't attend. My dad told me not to worry about this anymore and that he'll see to it that she doesn't ruin my wedding. Update 2. I sent this text to my mom. Mother, at this point I'm going to officially uninvite you from my wedding. I'm not going to allow you to change your mind, and I'd prefer it if you do not come to my wedding at all given your poor behavior. At this point, I've decided I don't want any further contact with you unless you decide to curb your toxic behaviors and drinking. I wish you the best, I hope you can find a way to heal, but I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry if this hurts you, but I can't handle you in my life anymore. If you try to force the issue, I'll be forced to take legal action up to and including contacting law enforcement. Please don't contact me again. I went to delete her from my Facebook page only to find a post that she had just written saying how being a mother is a thankless job and how she doesn't understand how she raised rude and judgmental kids. She ended it by saying she hopes her kids get over themselves someday. I'm done. This sucks, but it's been a long time coming. My head hurts. Small update, September 24th, 2023. Firstly, I want to thank everyone for their support. You have no idea how much your love and constructive comments mean to me. I'm glad I'm not alone. It's not a huge update, but I guess my grandparents and uncles have had enough. They've decided to stage an intervention next weekend. If she refuses to get help, she will no longer be welcomed at family events and she will no longer be part of the family. They told me not to worry about it. My sister will go as she's the only one of her children that even has a real relationship with her, but even my sister said that if she doesn't get help, she will cut her off too. I'm hoping and praying this works, but given that she spent 1 year in rehab and the second she was off probation chose to drink again doesn't give me a lot of hope. My dad told me he's hiring the local biker gang to act as security. We live in a small town and the nearest big city is about an hour away, so it would be really expensive to have a security company come out. I don't have a problem with that. This is the type of gang that helps out abused kids and animals, and they do a lot of good where I live. The worst I've heard about them is they doled out some rural justice to a guy that was beating up the sister of one of the members and ran him out of town. When my mom got her DUI, she ran into someone's house and car. When she tried to back out, no one was hurt, thank goodness. And I guess it was the house of a relation of someone in the gang, so they agreed to help, and my dad is paying them to be security just in case. They know my family, one of my dad's cousins is a member, and they know my mom. I think she dated a guy in the gang at one point, and what to look out for. It may be moot if she ends up in rehab. I'm not stressing about her anymore. I have 13 days until my wedding. I'm going to focus on the final touches and just enjoy myself. My biological mom made her choices. Now that I've stood up for myself, I feel nothing but relief. My stepmom will be there and I see her more as my real mom, so it's all fine. I've been through a lot of therapy already, so I've had to make peace with how my actual mother is. I'm officially estranged from my mother, September 24th, 2023, same day. Well, it happened yesterday. I got into a fight with my mother and officially estranged myself from her. It sucks and I had a gnarly headache when I was done. Her drinking and behavior just proved too much and I had to univite her from my wedding. I feel sad it came to this, but the most powerful feeling I have is relief. Update. My mother thinks she's entitled to alcohol at my wedding, September 30th, 2023. I didn't think I'd be back so soon, but it's my mom's world and we all just live in it. My mother got 911 called on her for domestic violence on Tuesday. She apparently started throwing wine bottles at her boyfriend, who locked himself in the bathroom and called the cops while she destroyed their place in one of her temper tantrums. She wasn't making any sense when the cops got there, so they restrained her and took her to a hospital. She's been stuck in the psychiatric ward ever since. My sister was listed as a contact for her and she got the call about mom on Wednesday. The doctors at the hospital spoke to my sister and they think she may be showing signs of alcohol-related dementia and some sort of psychotic disorder like bipolar disorder. They currently have her in alcohol detox, and from what my sister was told, it's pretty bad. They won't allow her visitors until she's out of detox, not that anyone really has a desire to visit her anymore. My sister and I decided enough was enough and we petitioned for guardianship for her yesterday at the request of a social worker who interviewed my sister, my uncles, my grandparents, and myself. A guardianship means they can hold her while it winds through the system rather than her being released after 72 hours. My grandmother's upset as she thinks all of the issues should be kept in the family and the state shouldn't step in. My uncles and grandfather are on the side of having a guardianship. As far as they're concerned, she's not welcome in the family anymore and they won't allow her to continue to take advantage of anyone in the family anymore. My sister and I say let her be a professional's problem and let them figure out what to do with her. My brothers don't care and have effectively washed their hands of her years ago, so their stance is whatever keeps her as far away as humanly possible. We can't deal with her anymore, and why should we? With the guardianship petition, I'm working on washing my hands of this situation entirely. I'm sure I'll be interviewed about why a guardianship is necessary, but other than that, I don't plan to have any further contact with my mom unless she apologizes and makes amends for her behavior, if that's something she's even capable of anymore. I just don't see that happening, and any compassion or understanding I had for her in the past is gone. Whatever state her life is in, she brought it on herself. I just want to move on with my life without her in it and be done with her for good. It doesn't look like she'll be released from the hospital anytime soon, so there's no risk of her attending my wedding. I did talk to her boyfriend yesterday after sister and I filed our paperwork, and we decided to invite him to lunch. He's decided to break up with her for good, and we learned just how bad things were with her. He's a real nice guy who's been caught up in a bad situation and had no clue how bad she could be. I feel really bad for him. I did decide to invite him to my wedding as I can tell he's a lonely dude who's been to hell and back. Not sure he'll show, but the offer is there. There was a time I'd have allowed an event like this to ruin the run-up to the wedding, but I've been able to separate my mom's behavior from the wedding. It hasn't put a damper on it. Now that my mom is squared away, I can enjoy myself. I just put the final touches on the catering order and am expecting the last of my supplies. My aunt wants to put the final touches on my wedding attire. If I haven't mentioned, both my fiancé and I are huge steampunk fans, and so we're wearing steampunk attire and encouraging everyone else to dress in steampunk. Not required though. My wedding dress is actually more of a suit situation, but it looks badass. I don't think I'll update again as I want to put all of this behind me, and I don't plan to have any contact with my mother going forward. I'm looking forward to a bright future with my husband. My mom can stay in the past, and as cold and heartless as it sounds, I'm glad she's not going to be my family's problem anymore. Post-wedding update, October 9th, 2023. I just signed into this account again with a lot of people begging for updates. I don't have a lot. I guess my entire story is now in the best of Reddit. Thanks, I guess. I never knew dealing with my alcoholic mother was worthy of a best post. I just wanted to rant and sanity check myself. Only news on my mother is that she's out of detox and currently in a catatonic state, refusing to speak, eat, or drink water. They may install a feeding tube if she doesn't let up. I think she's trying to be dramatic and get attention, so do my uncles. I could be wrong, but honestly I don't care anymore. We're not sure she has dementia, but she definitely has something going on, but doing any kind of evaluation while she acts like this is difficult. She also has liver disease, needs dialysis and possibly even a transplant, if she qualifies. The doctors made it very clear that if she doesn't quit drinking, she will die within the next 5 years and it may even still be too late. I think I'd feel more sad, but I've had to realize that I lost my mother long ago. I did invite my mom's boyfriend, but he chose not to come. He's decided to get help for his own alcohol issues, according to my sister. I wish him the best. As for the wedding, I'm now happily married, and on Wednesday I took a pregnancy test that came back positive. We're super excited but haven't told anyone in our family yet. The wedding was fantastic and the day went off without a hitch. We had a blast and are heading out on our honeymoon on Wednesday to Costa Rica. My brothers and stepbrothers very sweetly hazed my husband during the at-home bachelor party and made it clear they're excited to have another brother. My stepmom did all of the mom stuff during the wedding. That was already planned before all of this. No one snuck in alcohol, there weren't any scenes. The worst that happened was my sister crying due to all of the stress she's been under. I do have some sympathy, but most of it is self-inflicted though, because she enables. But all in all, it was a great day and I was surrounded by those I love most. I know a lot of people asked for pics on my wedding suit. I will see if there's some way I can crop identifying stuff from it and post it here once I get my wedding pictures back. Otherwise, I'll figure out a way to post the outfits themselves. That's all I have. I'll try to update after my honeymoon. Now it seems like a baby is coming, so no promises. I have had enough of my stepdaughter, so I moved back to my parents with my son. I'm also 8W pregnant and I don't know what to do. Update. Hi everyone. I don't know if this is even ethical because it's about a minor. I will keep it anonymous and hope for the best. I am at the end of my tether here and I feel paralyzed and in desperate need of advice. I, female 38, met my husband, male 44, about 4 years ago. I'm 8 weeks pregnant, only husband and I know. I have a son, male 8, with my BF who passed away in a car accident before my son was born. My husband has a daughter, female 13, stepdaughter for stepdaughter, from a previous marriage. My stepdaughter lives with us every other week. When we got married, my ex-wife tried everything to get full custody of stepdaughter and failed. But it was made very clear to me, by stepdaughter, ex-wife and husband, that I am not her mother and am not allowed to participate in raising her. Stepdaughter basically ignored me and my son for weeks. It wasn't perfect, but it wasn't hurting anyone directly. My son learned very early not to cross stepdaughter and kept to himself when she was around. I suspected the ex-wife behind stepdaughter's coldness towards me and thought this must be hard for stepdaughter with all these changes. I tried to befriend her over the years but she wasn't having it. It got worse when my ex-wife remarried and got pregnant with twins 2 years ago. She started ignoring stepdaughter, trying to get my husband to have her more, we happily obliged, and basically stopped being a mother to her. It didn't help either that the new husband didn't like stepdaughter and wasn't shy about not wanting to raise another man's daughter. I asked my husband if we could take stepdaughter full time and try to raise her because I saw that her mental health was deteriorating and that she needed stability. The ex-wife blatantly refused this suggestion, so we continued with it every other week. The twins were born about a year ago and all went downhill from there. It seemed like the worse stepdaughter had it at her mom's, the more she hated me and my son. She would throw fits a couple of times every time she's with us. Break our stuff. Call me a bitch if I tried to tell her off. It's her house because her father bought it and we're just guests. She would yell at my son and she even hit him a couple of times, telling him to keep to his room if he didn't like her treatment of him. When I told her not to put her hand on my son, she told me, "What are you going to do about it?" My son grew fearful of her and would ask me to take him to Grandpa, late BF's father, when she's living with us. I talked to my husband about it. I told him stepdaughter needed professional help because she's not feeling well and she's making us miserable when she's around. So she started to go to therapy. 6 months now. Other than that, my husband didn't know what to do either. If he tried to talk to her about being nice to us, she played innocent and told him she was playing around and hugged and kissed my son in front of him. And if he tried to be stern, she threw a tantrum and accused him of loving my son more than her. 3 months ago, my son's grandpa passed away. This hit my son and me very hard. My son was inconsolable for many weeks and couldn't really understand what it meant that he couldn't see Grandpa again. Grandpa was a carpenter. So was my late BF. So from a very young age my son loved hanging with him in the garage, working. Many times when he's there he comes home with something they made together. Butter knives, boxes, chessboards. And for my 38th birthday last summer I got a stool that my son designed himself and built with his grandpa and then painted. This was the last project they had together since Grandpa passed away a few weeks later, so the stool was priceless to us. We had it in the kitchen. The stepdaughter made a lot of negative remarks about the stool, how ugly and poorly made it was. She laughed at my son's poor taste and he was very distraught. This was the first time, however, that my husband got very angry at her and asked her to go to her room. She was so scared of his reaction that she went without any protest. This Christmas, my stepdaughter was supposed to be with her mother. On Christmas Eve, her mother dropped her off at our house very early in the morning. Her new husband had decided he didn't want her to go with them to his parents' house, where they usually spend Christmas. The stepdaughter was on the verge of tears, standing there listening to her mother making excuses to my husband and me. My husband hugged stepdaughter the whole time and I tried to fight away my tears. After her mom left, she went upstairs to her room to sleep. I also went to sleep since we don't usually wake up this early on holidays. When she saw me, she smirked and said she didn't want ugly furniture in her house. I pulled her away and told her to go to her room and tried to get the pieces of wood out of the fireplace. That was when she threw a scalding hot liquid in my face. It was hot cocoa. I yelled in pain and my son started panicking, so I ran to him to tell him that I was fine. The stepdaughter stood there laughing. I took my son upstairs and went back to her. I grabbed her hard in her arm and started pulling, pushing and dragging her up to her room and locked the door. Husband came home with my parents moments later. My mom took me to the emergency room and my son insisted on coming with me. I had second-degree burns on my cheek and neck. When I went home, my husband was so mad at me for assaulting stepdaughter by using force to get her to her room. He told me I should have had compassion, knowing how hurt she was by her mother's abandonment. I told him that I have had enough with this. I am living a nightmare 1 or 2 of my life. Having to go on eggshells in my own home whenever she's around. My son is a prisoner in his own room when she's living with us, too terrified to cross a boundary of hers. I told him that I didn't know how to handle this, and that it was a mistake from the beginning that I wasn't allowed to be a parental figure in her life with authority. He disagreed and told me that she has a kind heart and needed patience. But the thing is, I don't think she does. She targeted my son's handiwork, fully aware of its sentimental value. And my face, because she always hated the fact that my husband thinks I am beautiful and is open with complimenting my eyes and smile. I didn't stay there for Christmas. I took my son and parents and went to my parents' home where I live now. My husband is in panic mode. He's been texting and calling me all the time trying to get me to move back and work things out. Stepdaughter even texted apologizing. He probably made her. But I don't know what to do. I love him so much, but I'm ashamed to say that I hate that girl. My son starts hyperventilating of the thought of living with her again. And what about my unborn baby? I feel sick of the thought of having 1-2 custody, and being at the mercy of his half-sister when it's my husband's week. This thought makes me want to have an abortion. Please tell me if there's another solution to this hell I'm living. Update. Hi everyone, I hope you enjoyed the holidays. I'm overwhelmed with the support I received from you. It helped a lot. I was literally losing my mind and wasn't sure if it was wise of me to take these drastic measures. I'm sorry I didn't make an update. I just didn't think I had anything to add, plus these last weeks have been so hard. But I came here now to tell you that I have moved on with my plans. It's just hard for me to talk about it since it was a planned pregnancy and both soon-to-be ex and I were longing for him, her. It was also hard to see my soon-to-be ex broken over my decision. He thinks I have acted so fast and can't fathom how I could just throw away our life together so fast. I think he still doesn't realize the severity of stepdaughter's actions. He even had her with him when he visited me at my parents' house the first time. He wanted us to have a sit-down. When I saw her in the car, I immediately told him to drive back. He was shocked, however, when he saw the dark scars on my face. They'll fade away with time, according to the doctor. I can't help but blame myself though. It's my fault that he thought this was a sudden decision. Had I been more honest and open with him, he would have known this was hurting me and my boy for months now, years really. This blame will lie with me and me alone. I thought by keeping my mouth shut I would minimize the damage. How wrong I was. My stepdaughter is living with her grandparents full-time now and I think it's going to be a permanent thing. Her stepdad is adamant about not having her around his children. I think this is so messed up on so many levels, but I don't know if I have a say in this. It's her parents' call, even if I think it a grievous mistake. And I can't say that I care either. My boy is doing better. He loves living with my parents. He knows he will have to change schools and he's so scared about it, but he still thinks it's great that we moved. We started therapy. In one session, the therapist tried to explain to him how stepdaughter is not feeling well, and that she needed help. He got upset and told the therapist he didn't agree with her. He told her stepdaughter isn't the only one hurting. Many kids have bad parents and that he never knew his father and lost people he loved, but still he wasn't mean to his family. I cried for days after this. I am so sorry for what I put him through. I just want to spend the rest of my life making it up to him. My beautiful baby. With Omicron we're back to working from home, so it really doesn't matter that I live 5h from work. I work in a bank and I have talked to my boss. She will help me apply to a nearer office. I think I have covered everything. If anything major happens I will make a new update. Thank you again for the support. You helped more than you can imagine. Ciao edit. We have rebuilt the stool. We couldn't make it perfect and we had to patch it in many places and repaint it. But we love it. Some explanation from OP. I'm sorry I haven't been able to answer all your questions. I wrote my update very late and went to sleep. When I woke up it was locked. I will try to answer some here soon to be ex. And his ex got divorced because the ex cheated on him. Her relationship with the affair partner. Didn't last. An affair partner left her when they got busted. This happened way before soon to be ex. And I met. But the resentment came from soon to be ex. Moving on. From what I understood, soon to be ex and his ex were planning to give their relationship a second chance right before I met him, and he allegedly changed his mind. He blatantly denies this, but I've heard it from his ex and even stepdaughter. I know I was harsh on the stepdad, simply because I don't think him to be a good human being. His reluctance towards stepdaughter started way before the twins, and even before they got married he made it clear he would prefer it if stepdaughter didn't live with them. He even tried not to have her at their wedding. But after the incident, I don't blame him, even though I know he was happy he got a reason to get rid of her now. The problem is that stepdaughter loves him and the twins. She never speaks ill about him and always praises him. When she felt hurt by them, her hatred for me increased instead. I don't know how to explain it, but I kind of understood her. My soon-to-be ex isn't an evil man. He's probably a bad parent, but I don't think he is malicious. He knew his daughter was hurting and his solution was to spoil her when she stayed with us. It didn't help either that stepdaughter saw that he loved my son and treated him well. She always accused him of favoritism, and that drove him to spoil her even more to prove that she's his first priority. A vicious circle. On the morning of Christmas Eve when my stepdaughter was dumped at our doorstep, soon-to-be ex cried after she went to bed and felt hopeless. I think that's why he couldn't understand the severity of what she did. She had bruises from where I dragged her to her room. Getting mad would probably have been my first reaction if I didn't know the full story and my child was bruised by an adult. I'm not trying to defend him. I'm trying to understand why he reacted like he did. About my stepdaughter moving with her grandparents. I think soon-to-be ex, even though he doesn't want to admit it, is repulsed by her run. It's so sickening, but I don't think he can help it. He feels terrible about the termination, and he's on sick leave now. This is so hard for me to write, but I think this is the brutal truth. I have promised myself not to get involved or utter an opinion about this matter to him or anybody else. She's not my responsibility, and maybe it's for the best because her grandparents are decent people. Even though I don't know, more feelings of abandonment is what stepdaughter needs. I don't think she's a psychopath. She has feelings, and a lot of them, especially rage. I don't think she's faking her rage. It feels very genuine. Many accused me of being a bad mom who only reacted when I personally was assaulted. I will have to live with this guilt and make it up to my boy for the rest of my life. These few weeks have been so dark. I keep thinking that she would have hurt my son with the hot drink instead of me, and I wouldn't have had the time to prevent it because it went so fast. I can't stop beating myself up about it, and I probably deserve it. My only defense is that her violence escalated very quickly and after the twins were born. Before that I deemed the situation to be manageable. I was wrong, and I'm so sorry I let it go for so long. I don't feel well. The termination was so hard on me because I loved and wanted the baby. This has nothing to do with my political views or beliefs. I don't live in the US or any other religious country. Where I live, abortion is a basic human right and not a political view. It was hard for me because I have longed for a baby. Please stop abusing me in the chat, calling me a murderer and whatnot, or at least do it here and not hide in the private chat. I'm going to live with my parents for a while now, even after we settle the economy and separate our finances. I feel like it's good for us ATM. My son is so happy with them even if he misses soon-to-be ex. He knows if he chose soon-to-be ex. It meant stepdaughter too, so he's trying to adjust to a life without his dad. We're getting a dog. He has always wanted one but couldn't because stepdaughter is allergic. I hope this answered all your questions, and thank you again for the support. Relevant comments. Commenter. OP mentioned soon-to-be ex. Feeling unwell right after mentioning pregnancy termination. My speculation would be just some negative feelings or depression about losing the prospect of losing an unborn child and correlating the cause to be his daughter, and particularly the burns she caused to OP, which he got to see the scars caused by it as a surprise when visiting her. I am assuming OP's injuries were bandaged up when she came home from the ER, and was confronted by OP and had no idea about the severity. Seems like things went from blissful ignorance to shocking realization of the current state of things around him. Some sort of a breakdown. From his life going from being married with child, stepchild, plus unborn child on the way. No more marriage. Stepchild is gone along with the wife. Discovery that bio-daughter was violent towards wife and stepson, which resulted in wife getting second-degree burns and scars on neck, dart face, and that ended up being the direct cause of termination of unborn child. Pretty much went from thinking he's got a near-perfect life to where did everyone go in the span of a single day. Commenter. I'd like to hear more about why stepdaughter is with her grandparents rather than father. All we have is conjecture. Understandable that we won't get an answer if OP has completely broken it off with him. Which it sounds like she has and is certainly for the best. Am I the A for not letting my stepson 12 live with us? I don't want anyone to interfere in my life and the child is unnecessary in my marriage. I have 2 boys, 10 male and 5 male. And I'm getting married in the next few weeks to my boyfriend who has a 12 son from a previous relationship. My future husband's son asked his dad if he could come live with us after we get married because he wants to experience a genuine family dynamic with parents and siblings, given that his biological parents never married anyone else. My husband is on board with this idea, believing it would contribute positively to the boy's personal growth. I expressed to my husband that I have reservations about having him live with us, based on observations during the weekends he spends at our place. Firstly, he appears to have a strained relationship with my younger son. He rarely includes him in activities unless I specifically prompt him to do so. When I ask him to assist the younger boy, such as accompanying him to the bathroom, he does so with obvious reluctance. Secondly, he displays an excessive competitive streak towards my older son. He consistently aims to outperform him, and even taunts him when he succeeds. I find this overly competitive atmosphere uncomfortable. I desire my children to grow up in a nurturing and supportive environment. The third and most significant concern is his academic and behavioral performance. My boyfriend has informed me that his son has been struggling academically and has faced minor behavioral challenges. I am concerned about his potential negative influence on my children, particularly my older son. My husband dismisses these concerns as typical for his age, believing that with our guidance, he could improve. I sought advice from my mother, and she disagrees with me, asserting that providing a united family environment could greatly benefit my stepson. Both of them label my reasons as unreasonable. Am I the A? Edit. Many people didn't quite catch the bathroom example I provided. Let's say we're at a park. I can't let my 5-year-old go to the bathroom alone. So I might have my stepson accompany him for safety reasons. It's the kind of thing an older child should do for a younger one. Update. I know that I am not the best person, but I never mistreated or ignored my future stepson. I care for him, and I would never think of hurting him. I realize now that I was being overly protective of my own children and not considering things from my future stepson's perspective. I was afraid that my future stepson might bully my kids. For example, excluding the younger one from activities he enjoys like building with Legos or teasing the older one when he wins, but now I can see that if he wants to live with us, it's because he cares about his future siblings. Moreover, as a responsible adult, I understand that I have an obligation to help him with behavior and school grades. I talked to my boyfriend, and I accept that he can come live with us. Now we'll need to move to a new house so that each child can have their own room, and we'll have to work on getting custody. Relevant comments. Info on stepson's mom. Unfortunately, my stepson is the result of a one-night relationship, not a marriage. My fiancé said he even tried to have a dating or more serious relationship with her, but she declined. She has always had custody of the boy, and she has never been married. It's just her and the boy. I work remotely, so even though I have work obligations, I'll be the one providing more assistance to the children. I don't see it as a problem, even with one more child. He lives with his mom, who has full custody. He seeks my fiancé to ask if he can live with us because he wants to have a family with siblings. I don't know his mom very well. I only met her a few times, like on his birthday. After the update, we're going to talk to him and his mom tonight. I'm going to tell him that our house is his home, and he's more than welcome here. We're going to say that we are even planning to move to a new house to give him his own room. But it also depends on the conversation with his mom. My fiancé thinks we won't have any issues. OP is voted you're the A. This sums up the majority opinion well. You're the A. You're marrying his father, so you should start considering him as your son as well. If your eldest son, 10 male, started displaying all these behaviors, then surely you wouldn't just kick him out and give up on him. I would get your BF on board with ways to deal with the behaviors that you're not happy with. Update post. I initially want to thank the comments that helped me understand that I was in the wrong. I learned that I was being extremely selfish, only looking out for my own children and my fear that they might somehow face bullying at home, but I wasn't considering the feelings of my stepson. I've also learned that the dynamics between siblings, something I never experienced, inevitably involve a bit of competition and rivalry. I was so focused on myself and my kids that I couldn't see that if he wants to live with us, then obviously he cares about us, especially the idea of having siblings. So I hope we will work together to build a great dynamic in our house. I talked to my fiancé, even showed him this Reddit post, and told him that I agree our stepson should live with us, that I was wrong about my reservations concerning the boy. He talked to the mother of my stepson, who has legal custody of him. I didn't participate in the conversation, as I understand it's a moment for the biological parents. Despite being reluctant, after hearing from her own child that he wanted to live with us, she agreed to work out an arrangement where he will spend a significant amount of time with us. My fiancé and the boy's mother will still have to discuss the details. After that, my fiancé and I took my stepson out to eat his favorite burger and talked. I told him that we're happy to have him as a new member of our household, that we're going to look for a new house to better accommodate the family now that we'll be 5, and he can have his own room. He was very happy. We didn't address some concerns that I still have, like the issue of discipline and following rules. I avoided that topic so it doesn't seem like I'm threatening him to go back to living with his mom. I want him to feel accepted unconditionally in our home. But of course, we'll have that conversation about discipline with the older two soon to prevent any issues, and also emphasize the importance of maintaining good grades in school. P.S. There's no need for anyone here to send me messages cursing me out. I've received dozens of offensive messages, and it doesn't help anyone. I've also received supportive messages with advice, and I appreciate those messages. The internet and this community don't need to be a place for hate. Relevant comments. You need to discuss discipline as soon as possible to be on the same page. I'm aware of that. This issue has always been one of the key points for me. I always believe that when a child is disciplined by a step-parent, they might perceive it as unfair, which can significantly impact the relationship between the child and the step-parent. However, we've discussed making a list of rules and the corresponding consequences for breaking each rule, so I hope that no one feels unjustly treated. If something comes up that isn't on the list, then the decision will need to be a joint one between me and my fiancé. OP's stance. I've always told my fiancé that if my stepson came to live with us, then it would be for the rest of our lives, as my stepson isn't an object that we can return for some reason. I've always had that very clear. He was always a member of the household, you're the new one. Honestly, I think the issue here is just the choice of words. When I said member of our household, my fiancé and my stepson understood that I was referring to him becoming a new resident of the house, as he didn't live here before. Regardless of whether you agree or not, the fact is that he lived at his mother's house, and in practice was a visitor at ours. Of course, I did everything to make him feel that our house was also his, but there's a difference between living here and spending weekends. I never meant to say that he wasn't a part of the family. I've always treated him as a family member. This is a part I haven't quite grasped yet. Many people talk as if I treat my stepson poorly. When my husband read the comments on the other post, he told me not to worry, because I treat his son very well, and I think it's obvious that if I mistreated him, he wouldn't want to live with me. So, where does this idea come from that I treat him poorly? I know that when I said that I didn't want him living with us sounds rude. But there is a huge difference between how you treat a kid and what you discuss with your fiancé. Further info on the housing situation. It's still his own house. I completely agree with this, which is why I mentioned that I did everything to make him feel like the house was his too. But there's an aspect I didn't mention, and perhaps it's another reason for my choice of words. My fiancé is moving into the house I live in with my kids, so chronologically, it makes sense for me to refer to it as my house, and say that my stepson is a new member of it. Of course, from his perspective, we are the new members of his family. Child's perspective is very different and very insightful. Yes, that's true. The best I can do is treat my stepson the same way I treat my own children. And I don't believe there have been any instances where I treated him differently. In fact, I realized I was expecting behaviors from him similar to those of my older son, without considering his different experiences, which made me unfair to him. Does stepson have his own room? Are you spending enough time with him? This is a very important point. I completely agree that it's crucial for children of divorced parents to understand that they have two homes, and to have their personal belongings in both. The thing is, we've been gradually adapting over time. First I got to know my stepson, then he got to know my kids, and then they started spending more time together, until it got to the point where he practically spends every weekend here, even though legally, my fiancé only has custody every other weekend. He always had his things at his dad's house. But my house is bigger and my fiancé is moving in here. Unfortunately, my house only has 3 bedrooms, mine and one for each child. So he was left without his own space. When he comes over, he has to sleep in my older son's room. So in reality, he's been kind of like a visitor, you know? That's the reason I'm looking for another house. I want to give him his own space, just like my kids have theirs. Yes. I understand that my stepson isn't in the best situation right now. We were already looking to move to a new house after getting married, regardless of whether he would come to live with us or not, precisely because of this issue. But we were both planning to sell our houses to buy the new one, so it would still take several months. Now, we'll be renting a house in the next few weeks. Since we were already exploring the real estate market, we already know of a house that we like. Clarifying the bathroom example above. I never used him for free childcare. I was unfortunate in the example I gave about the bathroom, but I'll explain again what happens. We have a young child who's 5 years old. I can't expect a 5-year-old to behave in a mature appropriate manner at all times, but I can expect the older ones, aged 10 and 12, to understand that the 5-year-old is a little child who doesn't yet grasp various situations. So, for instance, if the older two are playing video games for an hour without letting the little one join in, it's obvious they need to stop and let the little one play a bit too. Otherwise, the little one will feel sad and angry, think that his siblings don't like him, and so on. I'm not asking them to play with the little one all the time, but to look at the situation from the little one's perspective so as not to hurt him. In the bathroom situation I mentioned last time, it was just me, my stepson, and my youngest son. When my youngest son is with any of the boys, he refuses to go to the bathroom with me. That day, he was practically on the verge of tears, not wanting to go with me and wanting to go with his brother. So in my view, my stepson, upon seeing the boy almost in tears over a trivial situation, should have understood he should help to prevent him from actually crying. But he only helped after I insisted a lot. Anyway, I believe my stepson will grasp this dynamic soon, just like my older son already does. You need to adjust your expectations. You need to adjust your expectations. You are correct. Am I the A for keeping the truth from my wife? Our baby's death was my fault, and I couldn't bear to tell her the devastating reality. I, male 25, and my wife, female 24, had our daughter Angela last year in November. We met at university. We dated for 2 years and got married after graduating. It's our first marriage and we are very in love. My wife, who we will call Kim, got pregnant during our honeymoon and we were both very excited. My parents are out of the picture and Kim only grew up with her dad. We both knew that we wanted to have children and give them the best life we could. Kim's pregnancy was normal. It was our first child. The baby was born healthy and beautiful. She had perfect chubby legs and round face. I never thought that one day I could love a woman more than I love Kim, but my daughter stole my heart completely. Everything was perfect, but we were very nervous. Since we didn't know anything about babies, Kim's father constantly called us and also gave me advice. My grandmother also taught us how to change her correctly and feed her. We were blessed with a lot of help. Kim's family came from their home country to meet our daughter for Christmas. They were going to stay until the new year, but on December 28, Kim's father had a heart attack and was taken to the emergency room. We went to the hospital and my father-in-law had to remain under observation since his condition was serious. To give you an idea, he might not wake up again. I told my wife that I would stay with her, but Kim asked me to go with Angela home. Whatever had to happen, would happen in the next 24 hours. She didn't want to leave her father's side, but she didn't want to leave the baby at the hospital all night. We agreed that I would stay at home with Angela and she would stay at home with her father and her relatives at the hospital. The next 24 hours passed and my father-in-law began to improve, so the stay was extended to 48 hours, and for 72. Kim came to get some clothes and see our daughter and she returned to the hospital. Due to her concern, I had not slept in those 2 days, so after giving her bottle to my daughter I put her to sleep and I myself fell asleep. When I woke up it was almost night. Angela was still asleep, so I decided to have a coffee and watch television. After 2 hours I decided to check on her and she seemed asleep. However, my heart stopped when I realized that she had vomited, and when I picked her up she was cold. And I wasn't breathing. I panicked. I shook her, I patted her on the back, I just desperately wanted her to breathe again. I called an ambulance begging for help. The operator gave me instructions to do CPR. When the doctors arrived, we immediately went to the hospital. I called to Kim, and between my mess of tears and hyperventilation I tried to tell her what was happening. When we arrived, she was already there. Kim cried and screamed at the doctors, begging to save her. I did too. They did everything they could for about an hour, but in the end there was nothing to do. My baby died at only a month old. They explained to us that Angela had vomited while she was sleeping and choked on her own vomit. She tried to calm us down by explaining that this can happen and that it wasn't our fault. Kim and I are a mess. I haven't told her that I fell asleep while my daughter was dying. I haven't told her that I killed my daughter. I want to end all of this. I can't continue with this. I miss her. I want to hear her crying. Having her in my arms. I want to change her diapers, change her clothes. I want to hug her with all my strength. I want to see her. I miss her so much. I hate myself so much. It should be me and not her. It's my damn fault. I want all this pain. It's over. I want to end everything. Relevant comments stoked for breakfast. Not the asshole. I'm a doctor. This does happen. Not just to children but also to old adults who aren't able to adequately manage their own secretions, etc. See a therapist and a psychiatrist. Both are better than just one. And you'll get through it. You're not the asshole. At all. Sometimes bad things happen. It sucks. Mary Moose 923, not asshole. Please get grief counseling. This is not your fault. Even if you and your wife weren't dealing with a family emergency, and even if you weren't exhausted, your darling baby could have passed in exactly the same way during the night, or a nap. Even the doctor told you that it wasn't your fault. Like any other parent, you feel responsible for what happened. That's natural. So please get therapy. If not for yourself, think of your wife. How would she cope with losing both you and your daughter? Also, encourage your wife to get therapy. She's hurting as much as you are. New post, wife's post. Editor's note, below is the wife's post placed in the correct section of the timeline to assist with the context. Her post took place 4 days after OP's post. Plus added paragraph breaks for readability. It's not easy for me to talk about this. It happened very recently and I don't like talking about my problems with strangers either. But right now, I, female 24, feel alone and lost because I can't talk to anyone. This is the situation. As the title says, my baby died recently and my family is broken. This happened on New Year's while my husband, male 25, was taking care of her. My family, my father male 66, my aunt female 57 and my 2 cousins female 28 male 30, had come to visit my husband and I to meet our newborn daughter for Christmas. I told my father that we could go ourselves halfway through this year, 2024, since due to his delicate health I was worried about him making such a long trip, but he insisted because he wanted to meet his granddaughter. For a few days everything was fine. My dad loved my daughter very much. He kept saying that she was just like me when I was born. I was able to see my cousins and my aunt again. She was the closest thing I've ever had to a mother. Everything was fine until my dad started feeling bad a few days after Christmas dinner. In a moment he just collapsed due to severe chest pain. It didn't take us long to understand that it was because of his heart. So we took him to the emergency room where he stayed for at least 3 days. During all that time, my husband stayed at home with my daughter, because I did not want to leave my father, since his condition was serious at first. When he started to get better I went back to my house to see how my daughter was doing. I felt calm when I saw that my husband was taking good care of her on his own. However, I asked him if he needed me to stay with him. He told me to be calm, that he would take care of everything and that I focused on accompanying my dad. My husband knows how important my father is to me, so I was grateful to have a man like him supporting me. I returned calmly to the hospital, but a few hours later my husband called me crying. It took him a while to calm down enough to tell me that my baby was dying. He had drowned. I remember very little what happened after that call. At one point my husband had already arrived at the hospital with my daughter, but they were unable to save her. Before you think it was negligence, no, my husband did not neglect her. The doctor explained to us that the baby died of sudden infant death syndrome. She choked on her own vomit while she was sleeping. My husband could not have prevented it unless he had been watching her non-stop. 24 hours a day, so no, it wasn't his fault. My daughter's body was cremated as my culture dictates, and her ashes are now in my house, in her room. The most difficult thing was to tell my father. He woke up from his comatose state on January 1st, but I couldn't go see him until the next day. Prudently, my father had not been told anything about what happened. I tried to put good face until my father asked to see my daughter. I tried to excuse myself, but eventually he had to find out only a couple of days later. I wish he hadn't told me since it caused him to relapse, and this time, It has taken him a long time to recover. During the entire month of January, my cousins returned home, but father stayed with me at my house along with my aunt to help me take care of him. My husband practically stopped doing anything. I focused all my energy on taking care of my father and maintaining the house in order. It was a longer and more difficult time for everyone. My father was finally able to return to his house on January 30th, and since then it's just my husband and I. He doesn't talk to me, he doesn't eat, he doesn't sleep well, he can't work, he works from home, he doesn't want to talk to anyone, not even me. My family has tried to talk to me, but I don't want to talk either. I just ask for updates on my father, I don't let them ask me about anything else. For my part, I'm back to work and I'm thinking about taking extra hours since I spent part of my savings on hospital bills. But I really want to get away from my house. I feel like I'm suffocating there. I can't get into my baby's room without crying. My husband, for his part, spends most of his day there. I don't know what to do. I cry to my baby every night. I cry into his clothes, his stuffed animals, his blankets, until I fall asleep. Now I'm eating twice as much. I devour the portions that my husband doesn't want, and I keep asking for more. The house is a disaster. I feel like we are both dying and we are doing nothing to prevent it. Relevant comments leader_inside. I think you need to read this. It sounds like your husband posted it a few days ago. It was deleted, but I found the post on Reddit. I'm so unbelievably sorry for your loss. I'm 34 weeks pregnant with a baby girl right now. I read the other post shortly after it was posted and haven't stopped thinking about your family. Please consider getting professional help for yourself and your husband if you can get him to agree. If you ever want to scream into a void who will just listen, please feel free to DM me. I'm praying for peace and healing for your family. And again, I'm so sorry for your loss. Edit to add, not the wife. My God, it's him. I have to talk with him big_fly_1561. I'm so sorry I can even be able to imagine the pain and heartbreak. Just take it 1 hour at a time, one day at a time. Anytime you can do something for yourself, do it, but the main thing is to focus on working through the grief. When you are ready to talk, I would suggest you and your husband do both individual counseling and marriage counseling. A loss like this is incredibly hard on both of you individually and as a couple. Try not to lose your husband or yourself. This wasn't anyone's fault, and I hope in time you and your husband can work through the grief and pain and find joy in life once more. My heart goes out to you. The fact that you're even here expressing this story shows how strong you are. Wife. Thank you very much. I don't want to lose my marriage. We haven't talked about divorce. Actually, we haven't talked at all. I know we need therapy. Thank you for your words. Update. Hello. Am I the A? I came here a few months ago to vent about the loss of my daughter. To be honest, I didn't see the post until a week later and I saw that my account was suspended. It's not important since it was just a discard account. So I opened another one just to let you know that I have read all your comments. Kim and I we are fine, however we are in the process of being fine. Kim is also an active Reddit user and saw my post. We talked a lot, we cried, and I have to say I'm glad she saw it. Since Angela is not with us, I have spent most of the time in her room, and Kim returned to work very quickly since she no longer needed maternity leave. But our therapist gave us a lot of advice on how to deal with grief. I have been diagnosed with depression and I'm working on it with the help of Kim. She's also in therapy. We support each other in every way we can. My father-in-law is as well as can be. He recovered, but he hasn't been well since we told him about Angela. Kim calls him practically every day. She can't do much more since he lives in another country and it's already difficult enough for us. Right now we are looking to sell our house and move to a smaller place. We bought the house thinking about having a big family, but we are going to postpone that for the moment. No matter how broken I am inside, my wife is my priority right now, so I have to prioritize my marriage. I will not update again. I wanted to assure all the noble souls who supported us that we are still here and we appreciate your words and support. You're all wonderful people. God bless you. Relevant comments. Dehydrated rain. Absolutely heartbreaking, but it might be better for her. Staying home and unoccupied gives the mind a lot more time to focus on the empty room and intrusive thoughts. 8 hours of work distraction and a good therapist/psych might speed up healing. I'm not saying this to sound callous. I speak from personal experience. Family emergencies for 2 people, but not as bad as this story. Krazi 11. A part of me just broke seeing her comment, my God, it's him. 2 parents grieve the loss of their newborn baby. Neither can handle that grief and are rapidly slipping away, and they're both so hurt that they can't even talk to each other about it due to all the guilt and heartbreak. They both reach out to strangers online hoping for a place to vent, have unbiased people judge their actions, and just some place to put this all down. Without the members of these communities pointing out how similar her post was to her husband's, they might still be both grieving alone. He would still be shattered in that room contemplating suicide and feeling like it was all his fault, and she would be working herself to death. To all those involved, their child died and that's beyond a tragedy, but you might have just saved their lives. Catmo, I remember reading the original post by my husband when it was new. I had no idea there was an update. I'm so glad there was one. The original has been living rent-free in my head ever since I read it. This was definitely a tough read. I'm so glad this worked in their favor and helped them get the help they each so desperately need. As a parent, things happen all the time that are out of our control. Even if it's something completely out of our hands, I think it's a pretty natural response to blame ourselves in some way. We're supposed to be their protectors. It's hard to remind ourselves that it is literally impossible to protect them every second of every day, but it is oh so important. You can drive yourself mad with that kind of worry. He could have been sleeping right next to her bed and still not been able to do anything to save her. These kinds of things tend to be silent and happen quickly. I'm glad that Kim understood this and didn't blame him or resent him for it. It's easy for one parent to do to the other. It's hard to not have someone to blame in a truly blameless situation. I hope one day he will be able to truthfully tell himself that this was not his fault. It's going to take time, but with them supporting each other, they will get there eventually. Losing a child is not something you ever get over. They will never really recover from this, and that's okay, but hopefully they can learn how to manage their grief in a healthy way and remember their baby fondly. To any parents out there who have lost a child, I am deeply sorry for your loss. I hope all of you have found at least a little bit of peace along the way. From one parent to another, I'm sending love and hugs to you all. My stepdaughter wants her real dad to give her away, even though he breaks her heart by skipping town and breaking promises he makes to her. My stepdaughter will be getting married on August 3rd. The wedding planning has consumed most of her and her mother's life. I say her mother because we aren't married, though we've lived together for 10 years, for the past 6 months. My stepdaughter graduated last December from university. I paid for her to go to college, though it was a state school, it still ran $40,000. She does not have a job and has been living with us for the duration of her college career and since her graduation. I also bought her a car to get back and forth from school when she finished high school. From time to time her deadbeat father would pop into her life and she would fawn all over him. Although he has not contributed a cent to her education or paid any child support, though that is my girlfriend's fault as CS was not part of the settlement, she still loves him and wants him in her life. He stays long enough to break her heart by skipping town and breaking some promise that he made her. The wedding venue holds 250 people max. I gave them a list of 20 people that I wanted invited, since I was paying for everything. They told me that was no problem and they'd take care of it. So I let these people know they'd be getting an invite, and they should save the date. Saturday, I saw one of my friends on this list at the golf course and asked if he was coming. He told me that he wasn't invited. He told me that he got an announcement, but not an invitation. He had it in his back seat, along with probably 6 months of mail, and showed it to me. Sure enough, it was just an announcement, and my name was nowhere on it. It had her dad's name and her mom's name and not mine. This led to a pretty big fight with my girlfriend, as I found out that none of my list of 20 made the cut for the final guest list because 250 people is very tight. I was pissed, but not a hell of a lot I could do because the important people in my life had already been offended. My girlfriend said, if some people didn't RSVP yes, I might be able to get a couple people in. But that is an ultimate slap in the face in my opinion. So I was boiling on Saturday. Yesterday we had a Sunday dinner with the future in-laws family and us and a surprise guest, the real dad. At this little dinner my stepdaughter announced that her real dad was going to be able to make it to her wedding and that now he'd be able to give her away. This was greeted with a chorus of, "Oh how great and how wonderfuls." I don't think I have ever felt so angry and so disrespected. I was shaking. I took a few seconds to gather my composure because I honestly wasn't sure if I would cry or start throwing punches or both. Once I was sure I'd be able to speak, I got up from my chair and said I'd like to make a toast. I can't remember exactly what I said, but the gist of it was this. I'd like to make a toast. The sound of spoons against glasses rings in my ears. It has been my great pleasure to be a part of this family for the past 10 years. Ah, how sweet. At this point in my life I feel I owe a debt of gratitude to the bride and groom, because they have opened my eyes to something very important. Confident smiles exchanged. They have shown me that my position in this family is not what I once thought it was. And now a glimmer of confusion and shock begins to spread on the faces in the room. Though I once thought of myself as the patriarch or godfather of the family, commanding great respect and sought out help in times of need, it seems instead that I hold the position of an ATM, good for a stream of money, but not much else. As I have been replaced as host, both on the invitations and in the ceremony, I am resigning my financial duties as host to my successor, Real Dad. So cheers to the happy couple and the path they have chosen. I finished my drink. You all can let yourselves out. Is this selfish? I'm supposed to shell out 40-50 grand for a wedding that I can't invite anyone to? That I am not a part of? I'm so done with this crap. I'm done with my stepdaughter. I'm done with my girlfriend. I transferred the money out of our joint account last night. She has not had a job since she moved in with me. This morning I called all the vendors I had written checks for deposits to refund my money. At present, it looks like I'll lose around $1,500 for the venue, but the other vendors have been great about refunding. Too long, didn't read. You want your real dad to be on the invitation, to give you away and to sit at the head table. Fine, your real dad can pay for everything too. Update 1. The immediate aftermath was a tantrum and people sitting there mumbling while not actually saying anything to me, but to each other. After much yelling with the GF about me being selfish, I spent the night in my home office and no one knocked on my door, not once. Today's aftermath is kind of depressing for me. GF brought me bride's wedding planner to show me how much work I was ruining. I thumbed through it, found a page in the music section for father-daughter dances. All of the songs were catered to Real Dad's taste. So I thought they were just being disrespectful, but now I'm feeling like they never really gave a crap at all, especially since the menu included 2 ingredients I'm allergic to. That actually made me laugh. Either way, I'm glad to be done, returned to the planner and asked her when she and the bride could move out. Also, I never promised to pay for the wedding. I offered them the use of my home when they were sure it was going to be small, but other than that, all I've heard is how it's the bride's family that should pay. So, let it be the bride's family then, aka, not me. Final update. Girlfriend and bride are now moved out. They are moving in with the groom. It was very hard not to be petty with some of the belongings they took with them, but it's done and I switched out the locks and now it's time for a brew. I can't believe how popular this story got, but I feel good to be given support by so many. If I find out what happens with the wedding, I will let you know, but I can't guarantee that I will put in the effort to find out. From what I've heard, they are trying to scale things back and get his parents to help out. GF burned bridges when I found out she tried to write herself a check on our joint account the day after the unpleasantness. By then I had already moved money, so I guess I'm a bigger ass than her, but I could feel it coming. That's all. Thanks. Am I the A to ask my husband to block his female friend who warned him not to marry me? She has no right to interfere in our wedding. I, 26 female, want my husband, 27 male, to immediately block one of his friends, Kyla, 27 female. He thinks I am overreacting, and wants opinions from some cool-headed people on if I'm just acting crazy, or this is something that would cross the line for you. My husband has a group of 8 friends he has been close with since his college days. Kyla is one of his friends. When my husband and I started dating, he introduced me to all of them, and everyone was very friendly. I used to hang out with them frequently. I am an introvert, and so is my husband. I would always ask him to spend time alone as being in social settings just saps all my energy away. His friends, and especially Kyla, always made it a point to tell me how he hangs out with them less after he started dating me. Kyla also had a weird energy around me. If I was with my husband, she would be the friendliest with me. However, as soon as he walked away, she acted like I did not exist. My husband hates to be touched by others. We both are neurodivergent, but Kyla would always tease him by trying to hug him, mess his hair, etc. I never felt she was flirting with him, but just teasing him to make him annoyed. Overall, she just feels like a person who has a severe social boundary issue. We got married 2 years ago, and things have been great between us. Last week, we had our second marriage anniversary and invited a bunch of people. His friends stayed back after all the guests left, and we were all drinking and chatting. One of his friends, Jen, became a bit tipsy and started complimenting me on how beautiful our house is, how I care for my husband, and how he has changed for the better since marriage. Everyone was laughing at my husband at how much of a slob he was when he was single. Jen then pointed at Kyla and said, "You better pay up, cause you had bet that their marriage would not even last for 2 years." Everyone became silent and started changing the topic. I also did not want to spoil the mood, and let it go, but it stuck in my head. After everyone left, I asked my husband what Jen was talking about. He also had noticed Jen saying that and was ready with a full explanation. He told me the story of what happened when we got engaged. When he proposed to me, he had not told his friends that he was going to do that. We went on a trip to Puerto Rico, and he surprised me there. We put our engagement pictures on Instagram while we were on the trip, and it was a big surprise to everyone as we were only dating for 1 year. When he came back and met all his friends, everyone congratulated him. However, Kyla started ranting about how he was a fool to propose so quickly, and she felt that I was not the right girl for him. Seems like she said some unkind things about me, implying I was a gold digger. My husband's family is wealthy, but so is mine. She had said that she bet we would break up within 2 years if we got married. That is why Jen was taunting her about how happy my husband was with me. I was very furious at this point, as I feel this is something he should have told me. I asked him to tell me truthfully if he had ever dated Kyla or had any history with her, as he has always told me that he has never dated anyone from his friend group. He said that he has of course not dated or hooked up with Kyla. However, Kyla had asked him out a few times when they were in college, and he always politely declined. I asked why he said no to her, and he said he just does not have any romantic feelings for her. I can see that because my husband does have a type based on me or the other people he has dated in the past, and Kyla is the opposite of that. I am just mad at her for saying bad things about me, especially after knowing that we were already engaged and betting against my marriage. I told my husband that he needs to minimize contact with Kyla and she is not invited to parties at our house anymore. He feels I am being too harsh for something she said almost 3 years ago. He also pointed out that she has been very supportive to both of us, and also helped a lot during our wedding arrangements. He feels she is just blunt and forthright when she speaks, but does not mean those things. He told me to take some time and calm down, and we would revisit this topic in a week. He is worried this will completely change the dynamics within his friend group. Am I the A for wanting him to block her and stop inviting her to our house? Do you think I'm overreacting? I think betting against our marriage and bad-mouthing me behind my back seems like a huge betrayal. I am also mad at my husband that he kept this fact from me, and also never told me that Kyla asked him out during college days. Am I just being crazy and reactive? How would you react in this situation? I don't want to distance my husband from his friends, but I also do not want to see that bitch Kyla's face again. Relevant comments. Commenter. Info. How has Kyla acted since the wedding? Has her behavior changed? You describe a bad behavior in the past tense, so one might believe she's not doing those things anymore. Does she still exhibit boundary issues with your husband? OP. Yes, her behavior with my husband has not changed at all after marriage. However, she is the same with all other friends too. With me, she is fake nice, where she acts like we are best friends in front of my husband, and barely talks to me when he is not around. Commenter. What did he think when you told him that she's totally different when he leaves? OP. He just says she does not know you that well, just ignore her. She has never said anything negative to my face. However, as a girl, you just know when someone does not like you. It's hard to explain to him that it's your feeling and not based on anything she has specifically said or done. Commenter. On blocking her. Especially with the physical contact too. She's so clearly into the husband, and the fact that he's not shutting it down means he likes the extra attention from her. It's one thing to get a friendly hug or maybe an occasional touch on the shoulder from a platonic friend, but shit like playing with his hair. That is 100% flirty behavior. And the fact that he's not shutting it down himself is gross. OP. I have to reply here. So my husband is physically allergic to people touching him. He has a startled response, either he jerks them away or tenses up when someone hugs him and his face turns red. The weird thing is he can hug his parents or sister and does not get the reaction. He never had that issue with me, even when we first started dating. However, even if my sister or parents hug him, he gets that response. So the fact that he shuts down any touch from Kyla is an understatement. Mini update in comments. Just remembered about my post and logged into the account after many months. Things were really horrible for the last few months and that bitch Kyla almost ruined my life. I don't even know how to describe it. I might write about it next week as I saw a lot of messages asking for an update. I just want other women to be careful of such snakes. Update post. I had posted almost 6 months ago regarding my husband's friend Kyla betting that our marriage would not last for more than 2 years. I was upset and had asked my husband to stop talking to her, because she disrespected our marriage. Since then, Kyla has pulled some really pathetic shit to stir up issues between my husband and I. After I wrote the post, my husband was trying to convince me that Kyla was just joking when she made those comments, and it happened so long ago. Kyla messaged me the next day apologizing for her comments and also not making more efforts to connect with me. I accepted her apology and started warming up to her. She started inviting me for brunches and girls' night out with them, and I felt included in their friend group. One day during brunch, I brought up why Kyla really thought our marriage would not work out. Kyla told me that my husband broke up with his long-term ex-girlfriend Joanna 2 months before he started dating me. I knew that part, but Kyla told me that my husband was really heartbroken after the breakup and swore to her that he would stay away from dating anyone. When he met me, my mom set us up on a blind date. She was surprised how quickly we hit it off. Kyla thought that I was his rebound relationship, but when he proposed to me within a year, she was worried that he was making a very rash decision. My husband's family is rich, and she thought it was unwise for him to marry so quickly without knowing me well. She did not know enough about me and that my family is also very well off. That is why she was concerned that I was taking advantage of his vulnerable state. She apologized to me and said that it was wrong for her to assume that, and over the years, she has seen how happy we are together. I appreciated her honesty, and Kyla and I became good friends since then and started hanging out more frequently. Around 2 months ago, my husband went to a conference in Seattle for 3 nights. After he came back, I got a "Hey girly" message on Instagram from Joanna, his ex. She told me that my husband contacted her a few months ago and they met in Seattle during the conference, and she could give me more proof if I wanted. I went through my husband's Instagram, but he seems to have blocked her. I made a mistake of mentioning it to Kyla, as she was the only person honest to me about Joanna, and she went into detective mode to help me. She was still friends with Joanna on Instagram, as they all went to college together, and opened her profile. The message sent to me was from a different profile, with no followers. We checked her photos, and we saw that she attended the same conference as my husband did in Seattle. Kyla suggested I should ask Joanna for more proof and also ask my husband about the same before assuming the worst. I asked my husband if he met Joanna, and he said yes. He told me he just met her in the expo hall and chatted with her for a few minutes. I asked him why he did not mention it to me, and he told me it was just a quick conversation, and he did not think too much of it. He asked me how I knew it, and I told him that Kyla mentioned that she saw her pictures at the conference, and I thought he might have seen her. I messaged Joanna again to share more proof. She told me that they have been chatting for the past 2 months and plan to attend the conference together. She shared a log of their messages, where my husband was actively flirting with her. The screenshots did look legit, but I did not see any of those messages in my husband's Instagram profile. I talked to Kyla about it, as I did not know what to believe. I messaged Joanna to tell us what happened between them, and she told me that he invited her to the room at nights and they hooked up, but she does not have any photos as he insisted. They do not take any pictures together. I immediately realized it was fake and messaged Joanna to fuck off. She kept on insisting they were telling the truth, and she spent the nights with my husband in his room on all 3 nights. I told her that my husband and I were playing video games, Sea of Thieves, for almost 2-3 hours each night after his dinner, as that is what we do to catch up when he is away. Unless Joanna was sitting behind him watching us play until he fell asleep, she was full of shit. I also told my husband about the whole incident, and he told me I should have come to him sooner. He told me that he has gone no contact with Joanna ever since they broke up, and he just ran into her at the conference. He told me I could check his phone and everything to verify that he has blocked her everywhere. I told him I do not need to, and Joanna might have run into him and just decided to fuck his life by making up stuff. When all the friends met that weekend, my husband and I told everyone about how Joanna sent messages to me and faked everything. Kyla was also telling what happened as she had told her about it. Kyla accidentally let it slip out that it's luckily, we are nerds and played video games at nights before sleeping. Else, props go to Joanna for making up a convincing story. I never told Kyla about the video game stuff. I just told her Joanna is full of shit and I blocked her. It took me until I came home to connect the dots. I told my husband about it and he confronted Kyla. She denied it and told him that I told her about the video game stuff on a phone call, but I don't remember doing it. We have since decided to keep our distance from Kyla. Kyla has called me multiple times to meet up, but I just make up reasons that I'm busy. I do not know why she did it, but at this point, I am not interested in it, and we have decided to just see her on social occasions and avoid hanging out with her as much as possible. I feel stupid that she played me for a fool, and I should have not gone to her when Joanna started messaging me. In hindsight, it seems suspicious that Kyla started telling me about Joanna, and at the same time, Joanna claimed to have an affair with my husband. I do not know what her intentions are, but I am mad enough that I will avoid her as much as possible. I wish I had some real proof that she was the one messaging me, so that I could expose her. I also feel bad for suspecting my husband. But I am glad my husband and I are on the same page now. Relevant comments. Commenter, does your husband also believe that Kyla made up a fake Instagram account, pretending to be Joanna? Because that's pretty psycho behavior. OP. Yes. He believes me because I told him that I never told Kyla why I thought the account was fake. It's possible she guessed it if I ever mentioned to her that we play video games at night, but it seems suspicious she would guess that was exactly the reason why I realized the account was fake. Commenter. Why didn't you try to message her real Insta since you knew the one she used to message you wasn't her main? Why not message her main account? That would have cleared it up pretty quick, I would think. Commenter. Why didn't you try to message her real Insta since you knew the one she used to message you wasn't her main? Why not message her main account? That would have cleared it up pretty quick, I would think. OP. Her Instagram was private. I did not want to follow her as it would have looked really bad for me to add her, when my husband has blocked her. The only way I could see her Instagram was when Kyla showed it to me on her phone. To another commenter. Trust me, I thought about this. Firstly, I will look crazy if I reach out to Joanna, my husband's ex, behind his back. Secondly, even if it was her messaging me, she would just lie and tell me it was not her. I also cannot disregard the fact that I started getting messages a week after my husband ran into her and told her that he was happily married to me. I have to accept that Kyla, if it was her, will get away with the BS. We do not have any proof it was her, and all we could do is distance ourselves from her. Commenter. Why did you lie to your husband about the fact that this woman had messaged you in the first place? You are the problem here. OP. Agree, I should have told him right away. I tried to be sneaky to know if he really met her at the conference. I was half expecting him to deny it if he was trying to hide something happened. I think I let my insecurity get the worst of me. Lessons learned. Commenter. Did he bring a gaming PC or Xbox with him to a work conference? OP. We both use Steam Decks to play games together when he is away. Mom and stepdad asks me to have sex with the stepdad. She is a piece of crap for allowing and enabling such behavior. My mom had me at 18 right out of high school. Long story short, my dad died at 19 while he was away at uni. Then my mom remarried at 21 and had my sisters. My stepdad, we'll call him Scott, was the only father I've known. He's been a great father, nothing out of the ordinary. Absolutely perfect parenting until I turned about 19. I remember Scott was becoming a little more touchy than normal, and a little too personal. He would offer me wine, I declined, and would ask me about my sex life after one too many glasses. I brushed it off because I thought maybe he was being a nosy father and just wanted to make sure his daughter wasn't having sex. Then this kind of stuff continued, to the point where my stepdad tried to kiss me last year. I told my mom and she just laughed and told me, that's how he gets after too many drinks. I knew then I had to make plans to leave, so I started saving up. After that incident things died down a bit until my mom got pregnant at 39. It's a higher risk pregnancy so she's on a lot of bed rest, and taking extra care of herself per her doctor. A couple of weeks ago, my mom and Scott sat me down and told me her doctor said she should avoid sex during her pregnancy due to various health reasons I won't get into. They asked me if I could have sex with Scott just until she was able to have sex again. Of course, I said no. I was livid, I was crying. She told me she'd be okay with it, and she'd be in the room as well. I told her that was even worse. Like, what are they thinking? I have enough money now for an apartment, I got approved, I'm signing my lease next week. My parents are ignoring me and the whole house is full of tension. My younger sisters don't understand what's going on and my mom told me not to say anything. But my sisters are smart, they know something is really up and won't stop asking me about it, especially the oldest. She came to me crying today and told me I better tell her what's going on right now. I didn't say anything. So any advice? What do I tell her? What do I say to the younger ones? How do I tell a 16-year-old about this without being inappropriate or bashing my parents? Response to OP: bashing your parents would be unfairly putting them down for something benign. What they've done is wrong and sick on so many levels. Forget about not wanting to be inappropriate because it's more important to prevent you and them from dealing with more abuse. It is highly likely that your other sisters will be subjected to this if they have not already, and they are younger and more easily victimized. You could speak to your teen sisters privately and ask them if they have had any uncomfortable experiences with your stepdad. Like him talking too much about sex or making advances, and make it clear that you're a safe person to confide in. I would also reach out to a trusted family member or someone you can ask for help from. OP: last year when he tried to kiss me, Child Protective Services interviewed all the girls and the girls were very confused because their dad has never said or done anything to them inappropriately. My aunt, who is a child therapist and called Child Protective Services to begin with, talked to each girl and said there were no signs of foul play, which upset her because she really hates Scott, but made her happy because he's done nothing to them. Child Protective Services said it was like a roommate complaining about sexual assault since I'm not his biological daughter. My aunt has been fighting to make my mom leave for years, but since Scott is not abusive to her or the girls, and makes a lot of money, she won't leave. But my aunt has actually mentioned he's been manipulating her with kindnesses all these years, so she would be okay with him having sex with me when I became an adult, and it worked. My aunt and I don't think he's going to hurt the other girls, but you never know. We most likely will call child services again. My aunt and I are probably going to call again and try to get the girls out and with her, or my grandparents who want them to stay there. My concern is telling the girls. I would be devastated if I was 16 and someone told me my dad tried to have sex with my sister, so now I have to live with my grandparents. So what do I say to her? Do I break her heart? Response to yes. You need to break her heart so that she will not be groomed into a sexual relationship with him. Then you can encourage her to get therapy. Another response. Do I break her heart? You will never be the one to break her heart in this situation. It's your mom and stepdad who are breaking her heart. You're just the one who has to tell her. None of this is your fault. You are not responsible for the trauma inflicted on anybody here. Much easier said than felt, I know, but I can't articulate how strongly I believe this. Their trauma will involve you, but it will never be because of you. You're a good sister. A really, really amazing sister. Update: the original post is above, too long. Didn't read? Basically, my mom and stepdad asked me to have sex with my stepdad. I declined, freaked out, and am now leaving. My concern is for my sisters. My aunt did what she said she was going to do. She barged in with 3 other people, one of them a social worker friend of hers, who was off duty, and my uncle. None of them are allowed at the house, so as soon as Scott found out they were there, he called the police. Before the police even showed up, I told my 16-year-old sister and the 14-year-olds what happened. The 16-year-old got angry at her dad. She was walking around the house ranting at her dad and crying. Eventually she decided to come with my aunt and I, and then we would figure out where she could go from then on. However, the 2 14-year-olds did not believe me. They actually started laughing. Then they got angry and told me I was trying to destroy our family, and how could you make up a sick lie? It got to the point where they threw my and my 16-year sister's stuff out the window. By that time the cops came and told my aunt, uncle, and the social worker they had to leave the property. The social worker friend let the cops know everything that's been going on. The cops didn't care. They just cared about the noise and the trespassers. So my 16-year-old sister, my aunt and uncle and their friend left. Very soon after, my grandparents came and got the other 3 girls, after the 14-year-olds called them and came to their senses. I found out from my grandma that one of the 14-year-olds confronted her dad and he didn't deny anything. In fact, he called me a whore and said I should have had any problems doing what he asked. That's when they packed a bag and called my grandparents. My grandparents explained everything separately to the little one. She told my grandpa she prefers him to our dad because grandpa doesn't yell at her. As much as that pained me, I hope it's enough to keep the girls at my grandparents for good. My 16-year-old sister is going to emancipate herself and stay with either our grandparents or our aunt. Child Protective Services was called, but it was my grandparents this time. I have multiple screenshots on my and my aunt's phone of my mother incriminating herself, so we will be able to file charges and hopefully get Scott on the sex offender registry. That way the girls can stay with their grandparents permanently. Thank you all for the support. I appreciate each and every one of your comments, and to the survivors who shared their stories, you're all so strong, thank you. On why aunt wasn't allowed over. Because they hate Scott and know he's a creep. Many years ago when I was about 13, at my younger sister's gender reveal party. My cousin, my uncle's daughter, who is trans, decided at university that she was female and came back as female. We all accepted and loved her the same except Scott, who got drunk and lifted her skirt and said, "Do you still have your boy parts?" That's when my uncle beat the shit out of him and knocked over a couple of tables. From then on, half of my family wasn't allowed back at the house per a trespassing order. They knew then that he was an absolute perv. But I, as a young child, didn't fully comprehend it. Good comment, the cops didn't care. Why is this always their fucking default setting? Jealous ex claimed I was cheating and faked a pregnancy to trap me, but it turns out that she was actually the one cheating and the baby wasn't mine. At 28, navigating significant drama has unfortunately become a recent theme in my life. My ex-girlfriend, Sarah, a pseudonym, and I ended our tumultuous 2-year relationship a few months ago after discovering some shocking truths. Sarah and I first crossed paths at a party through mutual friends and quickly clicked. The first year of our relationship was idyllic. We shared similar interests, loved spending time together, and even talked about our future. I'm a software engineer, while Sarah works as a graphic designer. Despite our demanding careers, we made time for each other, enjoying spontaneous weekend getaways, trying new restaurants, and binge-watching TV shows on lazy Sundays. We introduced each other to our families, and everything seemed perfect. But over time, things started to unravel. Initially, Sarah voiced concerns about how much time I spent at work and my close friendships with certain women. I brushed these off as normal relationship issues, but her jealousy and possessiveness soon escalated. She became increasingly upset if I spent time with female friends, even in group settings, and began scrutinizing my phone and questioning every text or call I received. One memorable incident involved dinner with my best friend Mike and his girlfriend while Sarah canceled due to work. That night, Sarah called me in tears, accusing me of lying about my whereabouts after seeing a Snapchat story from a mutual friend who was at the same restaurant. It took hours to calm her down and prove my innocence. Things deteriorated further when I began a major project at work, which required extra hours and late nights. Sarah had a hard time dealing with this, frequently calling me during the day, showing up at my office unannounced, and even following me to catch me in the act. Despite my reassurances, introducing her to my coworkers, sharing my location, and contemplating quitting the project, nothing seemed to ease her anxiety. The constant accusations and lack of trust were exhausting. The breaking point came when Sarah accused me of cheating with a coworker named Emily. After seeing work-related texts between Emily and me, Sarah completely lost it. One evening, she showed up at my office while Emily and I were working on a presentation. Bursting into the conference room, she screamed and cried, accusing Emily of trying to steal me away and hurling insults. Despite my efforts to calm her, she became hysterical, threw a potted plant, which missed me, and security had to escort her out. Emily was understandably shaken, and the next day, I had to explain the situation to my boss. He was sympathetic but warned me that such incidents couldn't happen again. Although Emily remained professional, the atmosphere became awkward between us, and some colleagues began treating me as if I were the guy with the crazy ex-girlfriend. After the incident, it became evident that our relationship couldn't continue. I took a day off work and went to Sarah's apartment to end things. I explained that her constant mistrust and accusations had become unbearable, affecting not just our relationship but also my work and friendships. Sarah didn't handle it well. The conversation quickly devolved into yelling, crying, and name-calling. She accused me of never loving her, using her, and cheating throughout our relationship. In the heat of the moment, she even threw some of my belongings out of her apartment window. It was a chaotic scene. As I was leaving, she threatened to ruin my life and make me pay for breaking her heart. At the time, I dismissed it as an emotional outburst, feeling relieved to be free from the relationship. In the weeks that followed, Sarah kept trying to reach me, calling, texting, and even showing up at places she knew I frequented. Her messages ranged from begging for another chance to threatening to expose me as a cheater. I blocked her number on all social media platforms, and eventually, she seemed to get the hint and backed off. I spent the next few weeks focusing on getting my life back on track. Immersing myself in work, hitting the gym more often, and reconnecting with friends I had neglected during my time with Sarah. Things started to feel normal again. Then, last week, while enjoying a quiet Friday evening at home, Sarah unexpectedly showed up at my door. She looked pale and exhausted. Before I could react, she blurted out that she was pregnant and that the baby was mine. Stunned and disbelieving, I struggled to process the news. We had always been careful, and given how our relationship had ended, I wondered if this was a scheme to win me back. Sarah claimed she was about 2 months pregnant, which coincided with the period when our relationship was falling apart. I invited her in, more out of shock than anything else. We sat in my living room, where she explained that she had missed her period, taken a home test, and confirmed it with a doctor. I told her I needed time to process this and offered her a glass of water before retreating to the kitchen to clear my head. When I returned, I found her going through my phone, which I had left on the coffee table. I confronted her, and she claimed she was just checking the time, but it felt like a breach of trust I had grown accustomed to. I told her that before I could accept what she was saying, I needed concrete proof, such as a paternity test. Sarah was upset and accused me of not trusting her, which felt ironic given our history. She pleaded for me to believe her, but all I could think about were the times she had accused me of lying and cheating. I insisted on a paternity test and medical proof of the pregnancy. Sarah grew angry, hurling insults and accusing me of cowardice for not taking responsibility. She threatened to tell our mutual friends and my family that I was abandoning her and the child. Then she stormed off, slamming the door behind her. Since then, I've been a wreck. I can't concentrate at work. I'm struggling with sleep, and I feel constantly on edge. I question whether I'm being too harsh. What if she really is pregnant? Yet another part of me wonders if this is a manipulation tactic. I've spent hours researching false pregnancy claims and paternity rights. Although I've considered reaching out to Sarah, I remember how toxic our relationship had become and how much happier I've been since the breakup. I haven't shared this with anyone, neither my family nor my best friend Mike. I'm unsure of what to do. Am I wrong for not believing her and demanding proof? Should I have handled the situation differently? I keep replaying the conversation in my mind, wondering if I missed something. Sarah did look different, tired and stressed, but could it simply be from the aftermath of our breakup? And why wait 2 months to tell me if she's truly pregnant? The thought of Sarah spreading the news weighs heavily on me. My parents would be devastated if they believed I was abandoning a pregnant girlfriend, and I can only imagine how my friends would react. I've always prided myself on being a reliable person, and the idea of being perceived as a deadbeat dad is distressing. But at the same time, I can't accept this without verification. Sarah's past behavior has eroded my trust in her word alone, and bringing a child into the world is a massive responsibility, one that I'm not sure either of us is prepared for, especially given the state of our relationship. I've been contemplating reaching out to some of our mutual friends to see if they have any insight, but I'm concerned about stirring up rumors before I have a clear understanding of what's really happening. What if Sarah hasn't shared this news with anyone else yet? I don't want to be the one to spread potentially false information. On the other hand, there's a nagging fear that it might be true. I'm not prepared to become a father. Sarah and I had discussed the idea of having children in the distant future, but never as something immediate. The thought of being tied to Sarah for the rest of my life, especially given how toxic our relationship had become, is overwhelming. I've even wondered if the child might not be mine. Given how accusatory Sarah was about my fidelity, could she have been projecting her own issues? Could there have been someone else involved? It's a distressing thought, but I can't ignore any possibility. The more I think about it, the more confused and frustrated I become. I feel trapped with no good options. If I reach out to Sarah for more information, am I opening myself up to further manipulation? If I ignore her, am I potentially abandoning my child? I know I need to act, but I'm paralyzed by indecision. Every option seems fraught with potential pitfalls. I keep hoping she'll reach out with more information or agree to my request for proof, but so far, there's been nothing but silence. Part of me wonders if I should just agree to whatever Sarah wants to keep the peace, but I know that's not the right approach. If there is a child involved, they deserve parents who are committed and certain, not someone who's just trying to avoid conflict. I've even considered seeking legal advice, but that feels like such a drastic step. What if this turns out to be a misunderstanding or a false alarm? Would involving lawyers at this stage be an overreaction? This whole situation has forced me to reevaluate our relationship. Were there signs I missed? Red flags I ignored? I thought I was being a good boyfriend by trying to reassure her and prove my faithfulness, but did I inadvertently enable her behavior? Should I have ended things sooner? It's been a week since Sarah showed up at my door, and I feel no closer to a resolution. Each passing day feels like a ticking clock. If she is pregnant, decisions will need to be made soon, but how can I decide anything when I'm unsure of the basic facts? I keep questioning whether I'm wrong for insisting on proof. Should I have been more sympathetic or more trusting, or am I justified in my caution given our history? I honestly don't know anymore. So here I am, turning to the internet for advice. I realize this is a complex situation, and maybe I haven't provided all the details needed for a full judgment, but I'm at my wit's end. I need an outside perspective. Am I wrong for not believing my ex-girlfriend and insisting on proof of her pregnancy, or am I justified in my caution given our past? What would you do in my situation? Update 1. Hey everyone, it's been about 3 weeks since my original post, and a lot has happened. I wanted to provide an update on the situation with Sarah and her pregnancy claim. First, I want to thank everyone who commented on my original post. Your advice and perspectives have really helped me gain some clarity. Many of you suggested that I should stand firm and insist on proof, while others pointed out that I need to prepare for the possibility that Sarah might actually be pregnant. A few days after our confrontation, Sarah reached out via text. She apologized for her earlier outburst and acknowledged that my doubts were understandable. She agreed to provide medical proof of her pregnancy and to undergo a paternity test once it was feasible. I was relieved to see her taking a more measured approach, though I remained cautious. We arranged to meet at a local coffee shop, a public place to avoid any potential drama and to maintain civility. When we met, Sarah seemed different from how she had appeared at my door. She was calmer and more composed. She handed me an envelope with ultrasound images and a doctor's report confirming her pregnancy. According to the documents, Sarah was about 10 weeks along, which matched the timeline she had previously given me. The ultrasound images were overwhelming. The reality of the situation hit me with a rush of emotions. We spent hours talking. Sarah explained that she had discovered the pregnancy just a week before visiting me and was unsure how to tell me, especially given our rocky breakup. She admitted that her approach, showing up unannounced and making demands, had been misguided and apologized for it. I listened carefully, trying to remain open-minded. I shared my perspective, explaining how her past behavior had made it difficult for me to trust her, and how the sudden news had left me feeling unprepared. We discussed our options. Sarah expressed her desire to keep the baby but understood if I wasn't ready to take on fatherhood. She said she wouldn't pressure me but hoped I would be involved in the child's life. I told her I needed time to process everything, and we agreed to wait for a safe time to perform a non-invasive paternity test, ideally around the 12th week of pregnancy. After our meeting, I felt somewhat better, though still overwhelmed. I decided it was time to inform my family and close friends. I started with my parents, who were stunned. My mom was torn between excitement at the prospect of becoming a grandmother and concern over the circumstances. My dad was skeptical, reminding me of how tumultuous my relationship with Sarah had been. They both supported my decision to get a paternity test and advised me to proceed cautiously. Next, I told my best friend Mike. He was surprised but supportive, offering to be there for me through the process, whatever my decision. He also suggested I might want to consult a lawyer to understand my rights and responsibilities. In the following weeks, Sarah and I kept in touch through text. She updated me on her doctor's visits and how she was feeling. Navigating this new dynamic with someone from my past was strange. Then, about a week ago, Sarah called me, panicked. She said she had started bleeding and was heading to the hospital. I rushed to meet her there. The next few hours were a blur of medical tests, anxious waiting, and intense conversations with doctors. Eventually, we learned that Sarah had suffered a miscarriage. The doctor explained that early miscarriages are common and not anyone's fault. I was stunned. I hadn't fully come to terms with the idea of becoming a father, and now it was all over. Sarah was devastated. Despite our issues, seeing her in such pain was heartbreaking. I stayed with her until she was discharged. The drive back to her place was quiet, and when we arrived, Sarah broke down. She apologized again for her handling of the situation, saying she had been scared and unsure how to proceed. She acknowledged that her past behavior, her jealousy and accusations, had been wrong and that losing the baby made her realize how much she had messed up between us. I listened, feeling a complex mix of emotions. I was saddened by the loss of a potential child, despite my uncertainty about fatherhood. Yet I also felt a sense of relief, which then made me feel guilty. A part of me still wondered if the whole situation had been real. I asked Sarah if she had shared the news with anyone else. She said no, that she had been waiting until after the first trimester to tell her family and friends. So only my parents, Mike and I knew about the situation. That night, we talked extensively about the pregnancy, our failed relationship and what might come next. Sarah mentioned she planned to start therapy to address her trust issues and jealousy. She didn't ask to reconcile or manipulate the situation, which I appreciated. I told her I needed some time and space to process everything. She understood and agreed that it would be best if we didn't see each other for a while. As I left Sarah's apartment that night, I felt a mix of exhaustion and relief. The emotional roller coaster of the past few weeks had been draining. Now a week later, I'm still trying to process everything. I've started seeing a therapist to help me work through my feelings about the situation. Having a neutral person to talk to has been beneficial. I've also been reflecting on my relationship with Sarah and my own actions. While I still stand by my decision to ask for proof of the pregnancy, I recognize there were moments when I could have communicated better or been more understanding of her insecurities. Sarah and I have exchanged a few texts since that night. She's been attending therapy and feels it's helping her understand her behavior more clearly. She's apologized again for how she treated me and for the way she initially handled the pregnancy news. I'm uncertain about our future. Romantically, it seems unlikely we'll get back together given everything that's transpired. However, I'm open to the possibility of building a friendship once we've both had time to heal and grow. Regarding the pregnancy, I still have doubts. The medical documents appeared genuine, and the hospital confirmed the miscarriage. Yet, given our history, a part of me remains skeptical. For my own peace of mind, I've decided to accept that it was real and move forward. This experience has taught me valuable lessons about communication, trust, and the enduring impact of past actions on relationships. I'm trying to apply these lessons to become a better person and partner in the future. My parents and Mike have been incredibly supportive throughout this ordeal. They've listened, offered advice, and simply been there for me. I'm thankful for their strong support system. Looking back at my initial post, I can see how bewildered and unsettled I was. I still believe I was right to ask for proof, but I now understand why Sarah might have reacted the way she did. Fear and hormones can drive people to act out of character. In response to those who asked, no, I haven't shared the details with any of our mutual friends. Sarah and I agreed that it's a private matter and that spreading it would only stir up unnecessary drama and gossip. As for work, things have fortunately settled down. The tension with Emily and my other co-workers has eased, and I've focused on my projects, which has been a welcome distraction. I realize this update might not meet everyone's expectations. Life seldom follows neat, clear-cut paths. It's messy and often leaves us with more questions than answers. I'm still processing everything and know it will take time to fully come to terms with it. For now, I'm taking it one day at a time, concentrating on my personal growth and healing. I appreciate all the advice and support, it's been invaluable. If anything significant changes, I'll provide another update. For now, I'm focused on moving forward, learning from this experience, and working towards a better future. Update 2. I had hoped to conclude my story with the last update. It seemed like a somewhat decent ending, but life has a way of complicating things. It's been about 2 months since my last post, and my anger from everything that's happened hasn't subsided. Just when I thought the situation with Sarah couldn't get more complicated, I was proven wrong. After the miscarriage, Sarah and I had limited contact. We exchanged occasional texts, mostly with her updating me on her therapy progress and me responding politely. I was still working through everything and trying to move on. Work was going well. I'd immersed myself in a new project, which served as a welcome distraction. Relations with my co-workers, including Emily, had mostly returned to normal, and I was even starting to consider dating again, though I hadn't gone on any dates yet. Then, about 3 weeks ago, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. When I answered, a man's voice asked if I was my name. After I confirmed, he introduced himself as Robert and said we needed to talk about Sarah. My stomach sank. I asked who he was, and he revealed that he was Sarah's ex-boyfriend. Apparently, they had been together for a few weeks during a break Sarah and I had taken. I remember that break. It was after a particularly bad argument, and we had spent about 2 months apart. Robert contacted me to share some information he believed I needed to hear. We arranged to meet at a local bar the following evening. The next 24 hours were filled with anxiety as I considered the implications of what he might reveal. Despite my reluctance, I knew I had to face whatever was coming. When we met, Robert appeared surprisingly composed. He was about my age and seemed like an ordinary guy. He bought us a beer and got straight to the point. Sarah had lied to me. The baby wasn't mine, it was his. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. Robert explained that he and Sarah had continued their relationship on and off even after Sarah and I had reconciled. Their last encounter had occurred about a week before Sarah and I broke up for good. He showed me text messages between him and Sarah from months earlier. In them, Sarah expressed her unhappiness with me and her fear of being alone, revealing that she had stayed in the relationship out of fear. The texts included her panicking about the pregnancy and her plans. One particularly shocking message from Sarah to Robert, dated just days before she came to me with the pregnancy claim, read, "I have a plan. I'm going to tell my name, the baby is his. He makes good money and he's always wanted kids. He'll take care of us." The realization that she had cheated on me and tried to manipulate me into raising another man's child was devastating. Robert, feeling guilty after the miscarriage, thought I deserved to know the truth. I thanked him for his honesty, though part of me wished I could go back to being ignorant. We finished our beers in silence, each lost in thought. Before leaving, Robert apologized for his role in the situation. I couldn't bring myself to hate him, as I appreciated his decision to come clean. After Robert left, I sat at the bar for a long time, trying to absorb what I had learned. The bartender, sensing my distress, gave me a free drink. I went home that night feeling numb, unable to eat or sleep. The following day, I called in sick to work. I needed time to process my emotions. I spent the day oscillating between anger and disbelief. How could Sarah have done this? How could she lie so comprehensively? And how had I been so blind? Reflecting on her previous accusations of cheating and her jealous outbursts, it became clear they were projections of her own behavior. After a day of contemplation, I knew I had to confront Sarah. I couldn't let this go unanswered. I texted her to arrange a meeting, which she likely thought was a routine check-in. We met at the same coffee shop where she had shown me the ultrasound pictures. As soon as she saw me, she knew something was amiss. Before she could speak, I laid everything out. The meeting with Robert, the text messages, and all the new information I had. At first, Sarah seemed poised to deny it, but then she broke down in tears, apologizing and saying she never intended for things to go this far. I asked how she could lie so deeply and attempt to trap me into raising a child that wasn't mine. She explained she was scared and desperate, hoping that if she could get me to accept the baby, everything would work out. I told her that what she had done was unforgivable. She had not only betrayed my trust in the worst way but also been willing to drag an innocent child into her deceit. Sarah pleaded for forgiveness, saying she would do anything to make amends, but I knew there was no fixing this. The trust between us was irrevocably shattered. I told her I never wanted to see or hear from her again and hoped she would continue therapy because she clearly needed help. Then I stood up and walked out, ignoring her desperate pleas for me to stay. The next few days were a blur. I informed my parents and Mike of what had happened, and they were furious on my behalf. My mom wanted to call Sarah and confront her, but I asked her not to. I just wanted to be done with the situation. I also decided to inform a few mutual friends to preempt any potential misinformation from Sarah. I didn't go into all the details. I simply said Sarah had cheated and lied about the pregnancy. Most were shocked and supportive. One friend admitted she had suspected Sarah might be cheating and had seen her with another man but didn't realize it was serious. She apologized for not coming forward sooner. I was hurt that she hadn't said anything earlier, but I understood her reluctance to get involved. At work, I finally confided in Emily about everything that had transpired. Her response was incredibly supportive and understanding. She admitted she had always felt something was off about Sarah but had held back from saying anything negative about my girlfriend. Through all this, Emily and I have grown closer, and I'm starting to see her in a new light. Who knows, there might be potential for something more in the future. Since our confrontation at the coffee shop, I haven't heard from Sarah. I've blocked her number and all her social media accounts. A mutual friend informed me that Sarah has moved back in with her parents and continues with therapy. Part of me hopes she gets the help she needs, but mostly, I just want her out of my life permanently. Reflecting on our relationship, it's clear now how toxic it was. Sarah's jealousy and insecurity weren't just minor issues, they were indicators of deeper problems. I now realize I should have ended things much sooner. I've been contemplating why I stayed with Sarah for so long and endured her behavior. I think part of it was fear of being alone, another part was the misguided hope that I could fix her and earn her trust, and, I'm ashamed to admit, a part of me enjoyed feeling needed, even if it was in an unhealthy way. Coming to terms with the loss of the future I had envisioned has been one of the hardest parts. Even though I had doubts about the pregnancy, a part of me had started to imagine what being a father might be like. Having that possibility snatched away, only to discover it was all a lie, has been painful. However, I also feel relieved. Relieved that I learned the truth before it was too late and that I'm no longer bound to Sarah for the rest of my life. In the past few weeks, I've focused on myself. I've resumed running, a hobby I had abandoned during my relationship with Sarah. I'm reading more, spending time with friends, and even considering a solo trip. Work has been a great distraction. I've immersed myself in a new project at work, and my boss has noticed. He's hinted at a potential promotion if I continue performing well. It's nice to have something positive to concentrate on. As for dating, I'm not ready to dive into anything serious yet. I need time to heal and rebuild my trust. But I'm open to meeting someone new when the time is right. This experience has taught me a lot about myself, relationships, and trust. I've learned the importance of trusting your instincts. If something feels off, it probably is. To those who followed my story from the start, thank you for your support and advice. You helped me gain clarity when I was too close to the situation to see it. If there's one takeaway from my story, it's this. Trust is invaluable, and once it's broken, it's incredibly hard to restore. Don't stay in a relationship where you're constantly questioning your partner or yourself, and if someone reveals their true nature, believe them the first time. As for me, I'm taking things one day at a time. Some days are more difficult than others, but overall, I'm doing okay. I'm looking forward to the future and confident that I can face whatever challenges come my way. This will be my final update on this matter. It's time for me to close this chapter and move on. Thank you all again for your support throughout this turbulent journey. Here's to new beginnings and better days ahead. It's been about 10 months since my last update, and I didn't think I'd be writing another one. I thought the chapter with Sarah was closed for good, but life has a way of surprising us. After everything with Sarah and the revelation about her cheating, I focused on moving forward. I threw myself into work, continued with therapy, and began rebuilding my social life. Things were going well. The promotion my boss hinted at came through, and I'm now leading my own team on a major project, which has been challenging but rewarding. Emily and I have been working closely, and I have to admit there's been some flirting between us. We haven't acted on it yet, partly because I'm wary of getting involved with a coworker after everything that happened with Sarah, but the attraction is definitely there. Then, about a month ago, everything changed again. While at the grocery store one evening, just picking up dinner supplies, I ran into Robert, yes, the same Robert who had revealed the truth about the baby. We were both stunned by the coincidence. Robert asked if I wanted to grab a coffee and catch up. I hesitated at first, questioning whether I really wanted to revisit everything, but my curiosity got the better of me and I agreed. Over coffee, Robert updated me on Sarah's situation. After our last encounter, she'd had a complete breakdown, quitting her job, moving back in with her parents, and diving into intensive therapy. Robert had been in touch with her parents, feeling a sense of responsibility for her current state. He told me that Sarah had recently discovered she was pregnant again, and this time, it was definitely his child. Although they weren't rekindling their relationship, Robert intended to co-parent with her. I was filled with anger. Why should Sarah get to have a baby after deceiving me about the last one? Yet I also felt a sense of relief, glad that I wasn't in Robert's position, tied to Sarah for the foreseeable future. Robert seemed genuinely excited about fatherhood but admitted he was anxious about co-parenting with Sarah given their complicated past. He mentioned that Sarah had made significant progress in therapy, addressing her trust issues and manipulative behavior, but he remained cautious. Before we parted ways, Robert hesitated and said, "There's something else you should know. Sarah's been asking about you and wants to apologize in person for everything she did." I told Robert I'd think it over but made no promises. In the days following, I couldn't shake the thoughts of what Robert had shared. I discussed it with my therapist, trying to navigate my emotions. On one hand, I had no obligation to meet Sarah or hear her out. Her actions had been unforgivable, and I had every right to keep her out of my life. On the other hand, a small part of me wondered if hearing her apology might bring some closure. After much consideration, I decided to meet with Sarah. I figured facing it head-on was better than always wondering what if. I asked Robert to arrange the meeting, making it clear that this was a one-time occurrence. We met at a park on a Saturday. I chose a public park for our meeting, neutral ground to avoid any potential drama. When Sarah arrived, I noticed how different she looked, smaller and less confident. She sat on the bench next to me, maintaining a respectful distance. For a moment, we were silent. Then she took a deep breath and began. "I know nothing I say can undo what I did," she started. "But I want you to know how deeply sorry I am for everything. For the cheating, the lies, and for trying to trap you with a baby that wasn't yours. It was inexcusable, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life." She went on to explain that she had been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, which shed light on but didn't excuse her past behavior. She spoke about the intensive therapy she was undergoing, learning to manage her emotions and insecurities in healthier ways. "I'm not sharing this to ask for forgiveness," she said. "I know I don't deserve that. I just wanted you to know that I understand how much I hurt you, and I'm doing everything I can to ensure I never treat anyone that way again." After she finished, I took a moment to collect my thoughts. I told her that while I appreciated her apology, forgiveness wasn't something I could offer, at least not yet. The wounds were still too fresh, and the betrayal too profound. However, I did express hope that she would continue her therapy and work on becoming a better person, especially now that she was going to be a mother. Sarah nodded, thanking me for listening and agreeing to meet. As she got up to leave, she paused and said, "I truly am happy for you. Robert told me about your promotion and about Emily. I hope things work out for you. You deserve to be happy." With that, she walked away. I remained on that bench for a long time, reflecting on what had just happened. It wasn't the dramatic showdown I might have imagined but rather a quiet closing of a chapter, a final end to that part of my life. In the weeks since our meeting, I've spent a lot of time thinking about Sarah, our relationship and everything that transpired. I've come to realize that while I may never forgive her actions, I can release the anger I've been holding on to. It's not about excusing what she did but about freeing myself from the negative emotions that have weighed me down. In my personal life, things are finally looking up. You might recall I mentioned some flirtation with Emily. About a week after my meeting with Sarah, Emily and I decided to address the situation directly. We've chosen to explore a relationship, with the understanding that we'll maintain professionalism at work and keep our boss informed to prevent any conflicts of interest. It's still early, but being with Emily feels refreshingly different from any past relationship. The trust and communication we have are levels beyond what I experienced with Sarah. We're taking it slow, aware of the potential challenges of dating a coworker, but so far, things have been promising. My friends and family have been very supportive of this new development. Mike even joked that he'd seen Emily and me ending up together ever since the crazy ex-girlfriend incident at the office. My parents are just glad to see me happy again. Work is going smoothly as well. The project I'm leading is progressing well, and my team has come together effectively. It's gratifying to see the results of our hard work starting to show. Regarding Sarah and Robert, I've chosen to keep my distance. Robert occasionally updates me, which I appreciate, but I've made it clear that I don't want to be involved in their lives. I wish them well, particularly for the sake of their child, but that chapter is firmly closed for me. To everyone who's followed my story from the start, thank you for your support and advice. Your input was invaluable, especially during those challenging times right after I discovered Sarah's deception. I'm uncertain about the future. My relationship with Emily is still new and its direction remains to be seen. My career is on an upward path, but I know there will be hurdles ahead. Life is inherently unpredictable. However, for the first time in a long while, I'm genuinely excited about what's to come. I feel like I've been given a fresh start, a chance to apply all the lessons I've learned and build a life that's truly fulfilling. This will be my final update on this matter. It's time to close this chapter and focus on the future. Thanks again to everyone for your support throughout this tumultuous journey. Here's to new beginnings, hard-earned wisdom, and the endless possibilities that lie ahead.